Game of Thrones, The Mountain. Chapter 1. In the 298th year of Aegon's conquest, it was the 9th year of the long summer in Westeros. March. The Westerlands. Lannisport. Lannisport, though called a port, was in fact a large city. A branch of House Lannister garrisoned the area, and the port handled 90% of the Westerlands' foreign trade. Within the port was also a Westerlands fleet to deal with pirates and the Iron Islands. Lannisport, along with King's Landing's Blackwater Bay Harbour, Old Town's port in the southwestern corner of the continent, the Vale's Gulltown, and the North's White Harbour, were collectively known as the 5 major ports of Westeros. Old Town's port was the largest in Westeros, and also the oldest. Built by the first men long before the Andals invaded. The Andal invasion from across the narrow sea occurred 6,000 years ago. The second largest port was Blackwater Bay outside King's Landing, the current capital of the Seven Kingdoms, while Lannisport was the third largest. Gulltown, belonging to Houserin of the Vale, ranked 4th, and White Harbour in the north ranked 5th. Not far southwest of this famous Lannisport stood a small stone castle. It was considered small because, compared to the castles of other nobles, it was indeed somewhat unimpressive. But compared to ordinary homes, it naturally appeared spacious and wealthy. This stone castle had 3 floors and a dozen rooms of varying sizes. The castle had a large courtyard, in the center of which stood a large straw man for practicing sword strikes, a suspended leather target for practicing lance charges, and 3 archery targets with painted red bullseyes evenly spaced on the southern stone wall. The courtyard seemed quite large, enough for riding horses, but it appeared shabby compared to the courtyards of truly great nobles. The castles of great nobles had huge training grounds specifically for guards and knights, several times the size of this courtyard. Such a stone castle truly seemed meager among the wealthy Westerlands nobles. However, throughout the entire Westerlands, among the 100 or so noble houses, no one dared to underestimate this small stone castle. Atop the castle keep flew a large banner, the sigil upon which inspired dread, 3 black dogs on a golden field. The black dogs were evenly arranged from top to bottom on the banner, bearing their fangs and claws. The top and bottom dogs were roaring and lunging to the left, while the middle dog was roaring and lunging to the right. This was the sigil of a newly risen noble house in the Westerlands, House Clegane. The origin of this sigil was that Tywin Lannister, Lord of the Westerlands, had personally granted it to House Clegane, a great honor, to recognize the bravery of Clegane, Tywin's kennel master. The kennel master Clegane accompanied his master Tiddos on a hunt when Tiddos, riding quickly, rode alone into a dense forest and lost contact with his guards. He wandered around in the forest, encountered no prey, but suddenly came across a fierce lion and was knocked to the ground by it, his warhorse injured and fled. At that critical moment, the kennel master Clegane arrived with 3 black dogs, who, under Clegane's command, fought the lion, each dying in turn, but also severely wounding the lion. When the lion lunged at Tiddos again, Clegane stepped forward, stood in front of Tiddos, and fought the lion, driving it away and saving his master's life at the cost of one of his legs. As a reward, Duke Tiddos knighted the kennel master Clegane, granted him a small piece of land, a small tower keep, and took his son as a squire. Clegane, who rose from kennel master to noble, was illiterate and unable to create a motto or design a sigil for his house. So, Duke Tiddos's maester designed the family crest for House Clegane. 3 black dogs on a golden field. The golden field represented the Westerlands, which was rich in gold, with many gold mines in the mountains, hence the Golden Land. The 3 black dogs represented the 3 black hounds who had fought to the death with the lion to save Duke Tiddos. As for a family motto, what more could a common kennel master need after becoming a noble with family lands, a castle, and a family crest? Tiddos did not care that House Clegane had a coat of arms but no family motto, and the maester was unwilling to bother helping. The illiterate knight Clegane did not have the confidence to ask the maester to come up with a motto for the family. Many of the small nobles across the country did not have family mottos, so it did not seem shameful for the new landed knight Clegane to not have one either. After the death of Clegane, the founder of House Clegane, the title passed to his son, who was his squire. After his squire's son died in a very bizarre accident in the forest, breaking his neck, the title passed to his eldest son, Gregor Clegane. Gregor Clegane was born in 266 AC, making him 32 years old this year. He was over 8 feet tall, nearly 3 meters, shaped like a giant from legends, and immensely strong. When he was 12, his height exceeded that of ordinary adults, and his strength surpassed that of ordinary people. By the time he was 16, he had grown into a super giant who was unmatched with a two-handed greatsword. In 283 AC, the 17-year-old Gregor Clegane followed Tywin Lannister in the sack of King's Landing. He slaughtered the men and women of House Targaryen, smashed Prince Rhaegar's infant son Aegon against a wall, violated Princess Elia Martell, and finally crushed her skull, earning the infamous title of the Mountain That Rides. Gregor's height goes without saying, ordinary knights were like half-grown children in front of him. His shoulders were as wide as walls, and his arms were as thick as small tree trunks. In battle, he wore the heaviest and thickest armor in the Seven Kingdoms. The armor was extremely heavy, so heavy that ordinary people could not even lift it, let alone move quickly and nimbly in battle. Underneath the armor, he also wore chainmail and boiled leather armor of the highest quality. His helmet was a flat-topped great helm, and to prevent the harm of stray arrows, his visor was also thick and dense, leaving only breathing holes for the mouth and nose, and a narrow slit in front of the eyes to observe the outside. The decoration on the top of the helmet was an iron fist pointing straight at the sky. His two-handed great sword weighed dozens of pounds, requiring the most valiant knights to wield with both hands, but he could easily wield it with one hand, as if it were a small dagger. Gregor's great sword was 6 feet long, longer than the height of the tallest knight in the Seven Kingdoms. Coupled with the fact that he used this great sword with one hand, his attack range was very wide, comparable to a long spear, and with just one sword strike, he could cleave a person in half, armor and all. He used an extremely thick oak plank as a shield, bound with iron, and painted with the Clegane family's sigil of 3 black dogs. Such a brave and fierce man, whose evil reputation spread far and wide, also had his own unspeakable secret. At this moment, in the famous Clegane Keep, this fearsome giant was lying on his huge stone bed. Rafford, Dunson, Polliver, get in here. His 3 officers immediately scurried in. Find some strong rope and tie me up tightly. What are you waiting for? If you don't want me to twist your heads off, hurry up. Damn it, I'm a geeky engineering student, and of all things to transmigrate into, I end up in the body of this heinous bastard, surrounded by debts and enemies everywhere, damn it. Chapter 2. The rope was found, a thick, heavy rope. Bind me tightly, Gregor roared, his voice like thunder, as if in a rage. If I break free, I'll crush you all. The 3 subordinate officers exchanged uneasy glances, their expressions shifting. Do it! Gregor bellowed. This sudden roar was like a clap of thunder. Rafford, Dunson, and Polliver looked at each other, then, hesitating no longer, stepped forward and began to work. Rafford, known as Raff or Sweetmouth Raff, was an officer under Sir Gregor Clegane. He spoke softly, was refined, never cursed or insulted anyone, always using sweet words, which earned him his nickname. He had a head of sandy, unkempt hair. But Gregor, lying on the stone bed, knew that Sweetmouth was a ruthless killer who spared no one, regardless of age or gender, and was quite skilled with his sword. Before transmigrating, this physically weak college engineering student and his roommates were avid fans of American dramas, having watched many classics. Among them, Game of Thrones was a classic he had binged twice while huddled in bed. Compared to anti-Japanese war dramas, American dramas were indeed more captivating. In the plot of the TV series he had watched, if the world was still the same and the story unfolded as it did, then this Raff would capture Arya Stark, Gendry, and the plump hot pie during the upcoming campaign in the Riverlands. Also discovered with Arya was the gaunt boy nicknamed Greenhand Lomi. Lomi, with an injured leg, told Raff he couldn't walk and needed a piggyback. Raff was the one who squatted down with a smile, reached out to help Lomi up, and, while gently teasing him, elegantly pierced Lomi's throat with Arya's sewing needle, which he had confiscated. This guy had also committed many misdeeds with Gregor. Last month, Gregor Clegane, under orders from Tywin Lannister, went on patrol along the Red Fork River. At the Riverlands border, in a tavern at the Trident, Gregor took a fancy to the tavern owner's daughter. Gregor turned the lucky girl into a woman publicly on the dining table in the hall before leading his men away. Just because the girl's brother glared at him angrily, he returned alone and silently, blinded the boy, and gently comforted the tavern owner not to be angry, because evildoers like them would surely be punished by the 7 gods. Being discreet, silent, smiling, killing, maiming, setting fires, and using refined language were Sweetmouth Raff's strengths. Unlike other officers and soldiers, he preferred to do evil deeds quietly, loyally following the mountain, never boasting about taking down another one. The rope was wound around Gregor's thick arms, pulled down to pass under the stone bed, and wrapped around the stone legs of the bed several times. "Don't strangle my neck," Gregor glared at Duncan. "Wrap it around my waist more." "Yes, Lord." Duncan's eyes flickered as he forced a smile. He wrapped the thick rope around Gregor's massive body several times. Gregor stared at this elite soldier of his, watching him sweat as he tightened the rope even more around Gregor's waist and abdomen. Sweetmouth Raff didn't know why Gregor had ordered them to bind him so tightly, and Duncan knew even less. Duncan was braver than Sweetmouth, but lacked his cool-headedness and strategic thinking. In Gregor's army, doing evil was not a simple matter. To do it artistically and elegantly, only Sweetmouth Raff could reach that level. Therefore, among Gregor's officers, Sweetmouth Raff ranked first, and Duncan ranked second due to his bravery. In the remembered TV plot, Duncan was the one who caught the blacksmith Gendry during the pursuit in the Riverlands and claimed Gendry's bull helmet for himself. His name was on Arya's revenge list, right after Gregor and Sweetmouth Raff. Every night before bed, Arya would recite their names. Thinking of the scene where Arya lay in the rain, muttering the names of these people, Gregor Clegane couldn't help but shudder. If he didn't do something, he could already foresee his end. It would be terrible. Remembering that in 2 years, he would be turned into an undead by Maester Qyburn, Gregor shuddered again. He had transmigrated into the world's #1 villain, and his destined fate was worse than death. If life could be relived, no one would want to transmigrate into the world of A Song of Ice and Fire. It was a chaotic, dark, bloody, and hopeless world. The others in the north were organizing an army of millions of whites, eyeing the human race and humanoid life with fierce ambition, attempting to sweep across the entire continent in one fell swoop. Across the narrow sea, the bloodline of the fallen Targaryen family would rise again with the help of dragons. And around him, the Lannister family, the wealthiest in the Seven Kingdoms, was gradually heading towards decline, division, internal strife, and bloody revenge and being revenged. It was a noble society filled with lies, battles, massacres, conspiracies, and betrayals. And Gregor Clegane, who seemed to have the highest combat power, was nothing more than a chamber pot under Tywin's crotch. He was picked up when needed, and discarded when he was no longer needed, deemed dirty and smelly. Who would like a chamber pot? But no matter how great the noble, when night came, who could do without a chamber pot? Gregor Clegane's notorious reputation had always subjected Tywin Lannister to open and veiled accusations from the nobles of the Seven Kingdoms. Because of Gregor Clegane, the Starks of the North and the Martells of the South kept the Lannister family at arm's length, harboring resentment in their hearts. Especially the South, Dorne, because of the sack of King's Landing in 283 AC that destroyed the Targaryen dynasty. The entire Dornish people and their ruler, the Martell family, hated Gregor Clegane and the Lannister family to the bone. Although the current Gregor was an engineering student from Earth with a decent IQ, he admitted that with his 3 years of college social experience, he would lose to Littlefinger or Peter Baelish in King's Landing in terms of conspiracy, to the Starks of the North in terms of honor, to Oberyn Martell of Dorne in terms of spear skills with snake venom, and to Daenerys Targaryen of the Essos continent in terms of luck. He could only admit defeat and fall to the ground to win. This made Gregor feel very uneasy. The one responsible for binding Gregor's legs was Polliver, a small leader in his army. This guy was tall, bald, and had a black beard. His only advantage was loyalty, and his only disadvantage was also loyalty. Any order Gregor Clegane gave, any order, he would risk his life to complete. This was a guy without a sense of right and wrong. In the language of Gregor's pre-transmigration world, he was a brainless fan of Gregor's. The fate of brainless fans is usually not good. In the original drama, Polliver died by the swords of Sandor Clegane and Arya. Gregor could see the top of the tall Polliver's bald head without raising his neck. If he didn't think of a way to change his fate, the end of this brainless fan who followed him would be equally miserable. Chapter 3. Remembering Gregor's, his own, countless sins, Gregor felt a myriad of emotions. Before transmigrating, he was a well-behaved and studious child, upright and kind. Or perhaps cowardly would be a more fitting description than kind, upright and cowardly, and he also liked small animals. He wouldn't dare say he was a noble person, but one thing was certain, he was a good person. A good person, yet powerless to deny the sins that even he himself couldn't accept. Not only could he not deny them, but he also had to bear all the consequences those sins brought. For example, 2 years later, at the wedding of King Joffrey, he would be pierced by the Dornish red viper Oberyn Martell's lance, the tip of which was coated with the red viper's carefully concocted venom. Among the myriad of emotions in Gregor's heart, there was a flavor he didn't want to admit: despair. Ah! Gregor let out a shout. The shout released him, making him feel a little bit better. But then it made Gregor's hair stand on end. Although he knew it wasn't real, fear still gripped his heart, causing him to doubt whether his decision was correct. In the TV series, his body looked great, but the torment and harm caused by the poppy milk were not properly shown. Gregor began to struggle. His stone bed was very sturdy, and the ropes binding him were thick and numerous enough, but as Gregor exerted his strength, the stone bed began to shake, and the ropes made creaking sounds as they tightened. Outside the door, Sweetmouth Rafford, the executioner Dunson, and the brain-dead Fan Polliver exchanged glances again. When Gregor howled like a wounded timber wolf, Sweetmouth Rafford whispered to the executioner Dunson, "The Lord is screaming too miserably. Go in and take a look." Sweetmouth Rafford's intention was obvious. If the Lord wanted to punish someone, Dunson would be the one disobeying orders. If the Lord needed help, he would be the first to offer an idea. If something happened, brother, you take the lead. If there was a reward to be gained, of course, it should belong to him. Dunson was brave but slower-witted than Sweetmouth. He was utterly loyal to Gregor. In Gregor's previous life's language, Gregor was his idol. His idol was screaming so miserably that the entire floor of the room was shaking. He felt really painful in his heart, wishing he could share everything for Gregor. With Sweetmouth Rafford's hint, the executioner Dunson immediately reached out to open the door, but his hand was held down by Gregor's number one brain-dead Fan, Polliver. "Dunson," the Lord said, "no matter what happens, you can't go in. Just open the door and take a look. What if the Lord needs our help?" Sweetmouth Rafford said softly, like a lady. Polliver hated Sweetmouth very much. "Sweetmouth, the Lord's orders must not be violated by anyone. But the Lord is ordering us to go in now." Sweetmouth raised an eyebrow, his eyes full of gentle smiles. "The Lord said that only his commands when he is calm are the real commands. Now the Lord is in a rage and struggling, not when he is calm." The fact that the number one brain-dead Fan Polliver followed orders 100% was what Gregor was most reassured about. Sweetmouth chuckled, "Polliver, if you kill the Lord." Sweetmouth glanced at Dunson, deliberately provoking him, "Okay, my swordsmanship is no match for you. I know you always think your swordsmanship is the best except for the Lord. I'll step back a little bit." Dunson's bravery was second to none, and he couldn't stand anyone saying they were better than him, except for his idol Gregor. No one could show off their swordsmanship in front of him. "Polliver, get out of the way. I'm for the Lord's safety." Dunson shouted sharply, his hand on the hilt of his sword. Indeed, inside the room, Gregor's miserable screams almost lifted the roof. He was shouting for poppy milk, he was threatening to kill everyone in the castle, he was ordering the three most loyal guys to him to quickly untie him. He was struggling desperately, and the dozens of thick ropes were groaning. His stone bed was also moved by his strength. The huge stone bed weighed 2,000 pounds and made banging sounds on the ground, and the vibration was transmitted to the outside of the house through the ground. The number one brain-dead Fan Polliver's face changed, and he choked out his long sword and shouted, "Sweetmouth Rafford, Executioner Dunson, if you want to open the door and go in, you must kill me first." In fact, both Sweetmouth Rafford and the Executioner Dunson were senior brain-dead fans of Gregor. Gregor's influence on these two scumbags was like a radiant lighthouse. However, in comparison, the number one brain-dead Polliver never doubted any of Gregor's orders. He was a single-minded person, a point, a line. Gregor's orders were everything, absolutely not to be overstepped. "What if something happens to the Lord?" Sweetmouth Rafford said softly with a smile. Clang! Dunson's sword was also immediately drawn. "Polliver, get out of the way. Get out of my way, Dunson, think clearly, what was the Lord's order to us?" Polliver said righteously, without flinching. Inside the room, Gregor was suffering from hallucinations due to his addiction to poppy milk, but his clear reason had not completely disappeared. Fortunately, he was firmly tied to the stone bed with thick ropes, otherwise, he would have been furious and killed everyone who opened the door. As long as he didn't lose emotional control, Gregor had always been good to his subordinates. He was very protective of his own. As long as they were his people, even if he knew they were wrong, he would definitely fight to win. His method was also very simple, whoever had the bigger fist had the reason. And his fist was always a little bigger than his opponent's, so after so many years of fighting, Gregor was always on the side of right and justice, he was the winner. Listening to the extremely miserable howl of his absolute idol, feeling the violent vibration of the ground, Dunsen said gloomily, "Polliver, I'm going to kill you. You dare to openly disobey the Lord's order, I'm going to kill you too." Polliver was exasperated. All subordinates who dared to disobey Lord Gregor's orders deserved to die, including all the guy's family and relatives, all deserved to die. Polliver's long sword drew a stream of light, heading straight for Dunsen's chest. The chest area is large, making it easier to hit. And although Dunsen was very stupid, Polliver always thought so, Dunsen's swordsmanship was indeed a bit clever. Dunsen sneered, holding his long sword horizontally in front of his chest, but he blocked nothing. Polliver's sword changed its move midway, the tip of the sword turned upward, and stabbed fiercely at Dunsen's throat. Polliver knew that he was no match for Dunsen, so he used a trick, pretending to stab Dunsen's chest, but in fact, he wanted to stab Dunsen's throat, a fatal blow. Chapter 4. Dunsen was shocked. Polliver's attack was merciless, aiming for Dunsen's life. This was different from a competition, nor was it for stopping him, it was simply murder. Dunsen wasn't as single-minded as Polliver. He only wanted to go into the room to see if his idol, Gregor, needed help. He didn't have the determination to kill Polliver. But Polliver was determined to get rid of him. This sword move was too fast, and it was a planned attack against an unsuspecting opponent. Dunsen didn't have time to retreat. Raising his sword could block the thrust, but there was a problem, there wasn't enough time. Sweetmouth was also taken aback. He was Gregor's #1 subordinate. Whether it was Dunsen or Polliver, both were Gregor's beloved generals. If either of them died, he wouldn't be able to escape responsibility. Injury and disability were acceptable, but not killing. Gregor Clegane was never cruel to his brothers, on the contrary, he was very tolerant. It's just that his tolerance, in the eyes of other nobles and knights, was cruelty. "Careful." Sweetmouth's smiling expression froze on his face. A cold light flashed, and Polliver's sword stabbed fiercely at Dunsen's throat. Whoosh! The sword light flashed, and blood spurted out. In his desperate situation, Dunsen twisted his neck to the side, dodging Polliver's fatal blow, but he was still a little slow. A long bloodstain appeared on his neck with a whoosh, and blood splattered. Although the injury was not light, he still avoided the fatal throat penetration kill. If this sword had hit, Dunsen's neck would have been pierced by a sword, entering the throat and exiting the back of the neck. Dunsen broke out in a cold sweat. If he had been just a little slower, his neck would have been cut even deeper by the blade, and once the carotid artery was cut, he would have died. Polliver succeeded, but was angry that he hadn't penetrated Dunsen's throat. Scared? "Don't dodge! You damned bastard!" This was also very shameless. He had the heart to kill, but complained that others shouldn't dodge. Dunsen escaped the throat penetration kill, took 2 steps back, and continuously avoided Polliver's fierce thrusts at his face and lower abdomen. After thrusting at the face, he changed to thrusting at the lower abdomen. Polliver's swordsmanship was also not weak. Whether it was the face or the lower abdomen, it could be seen that Polliver really wanted to kill Dunsen. Killing and stopping someone are completely different. Dunsen was furious, ignoring the half-arc of bloody marks that had grazed his throat from right to left, as if he was wearing a blood-colored necklace. He wielded the long sword in his hand, using speed to overcome slowness, and with 3 consecutive strikes, he immediately turned from defense to offense. Polliver retreated and sidestepped, then suddenly spun and slashed, fiercely chopping at Dunsen's waist. The terrain here was not wide, and Dunsen could not jump left or dodge right. He either had to resist head-on or retreat. If he resisted head-on, Polliver hoped to use the inertia of his body's half-spin to knock down Dunsen's long sword. If Dunsen retreated, he would take the opportunity to continuously chop down on his head, relying on strength to win, because the space to retreat was limited, only 4 steps, and Dunsen would have no way to retreat. Behind him was a high wall made of stone. Polliver's swordsmanship was not as good as Dunsen's, but his strength was still greater than Dunsen's. Dunsen's sword fighting, influenced by his super idol Gregor, was resolutely not retreating. Polliver was sure that the stupid Dunsen would resist head-on. Polliver had always believed that among Gregor's officers, Dunsen was the most stupid, and Sweetmouth Rafford was second. Dunsen really didn't retreat, changing from holding the sword with one hand to holding it with both hands, and suddenly swung it diagonally from left to right and from bottom to top, to resist Polliver's spin-slash head-on. Their super idol Gregor's spin-slash was very powerful, with infinite strength. Once, Even people and horses were chopped into 2 pieces by a half-spin slash. It was also from that time that the number 1 brainless fan, Polliver, began to practice the spin slash hard. In order to keep up with Gregor's pace, Polliver's spin slash focused only on strength, not skill. The 2 swords clashed, like 2 silver lights. However, unexpectedly, the 2 swords did not explode with the loud clang that Polliver expected, but with a light ding sound. Dun Sen cleverly spun his body, gently leaning and deflecting the sword, using force to transfer force, and diverting Polliver's slash that was full of strength. At the moment when the 2 people's swords collided, Dun Sen's footsteps rotated, his body rotated, and the long sword in his hand rotated with his body, brushing past Polliver. Polliver's fierce slash was like a heavy punch hitting cotton. Polliver used too much force and staggered forward. Dun Sen had already disappeared, and he and Dun Sen had exchanged positions. It was just that Polliver was facing away from Dun Sen, and for a while, he couldn't turn around the direction of inertia pressing on his body. Dun Sen drew a semicircle with the long sword in his hand and slashed fiercely at Polliver's back. If you want to kill me, then I will kill you too. In front of Gregor, this natural killing god, his younger brothers were all heavily influenced by him and had a lot of hostility. Once they turned against each other, it would be a fight to the death. Careful! Sweetmouth Rafford, who had retreated far away, was shocked. This time, the careful was to remind Polliver. Polliver's spin slash missed, and after exchanging positions with Dun Sen, he lost his footing. He was facing away from Dun Sen. Hearing Rafford's shout, he panicked in his heart and darted forward with the help of inertia. Whoosh! Dun Sen's desperate slash left a long bloodstain on Polliver's back, from his neck to his tailbone, a whole terrifying blood line. The clothes on his body were also split in 2. Polliver only felt a pain in his back, and his body had already darted to the stone wall. He had originally planned to force Dun Sen to compete with him in strength in front of this stone wall, but who knew that the spin slash would miss and he would exchange positions with Dun Sen, forcing himself to the stone wall. Polliver turned around to face the enemy. Dun Sen's sword was as fast as a shooting star, stabbing straight at his throat. This was the penetration kill he had used to plot against Dun Sen at the beginning. A fatal blow. Dun Sen's sword technique of penetrating the throat was much better than Polliver's, and it was also faster and more powerful. Polliver couldn't retreat or dodge, he could only resist head-on. Clang! With a loud noise, Polliver's sword blocked this penetration kill. Before he could counterattack, Dun Sen's sword used the force to swing away, his wrist flipped, and 2 sword flowers almost simultaneously stabbed towards Polliver's left and right chests. Polliver didn't know which of these 2 sword flowers was real and which was fake. He didn't care so much, and swung his sword to chop fiercely at Dun Sen's head. A loss for both sides. However, Dun Sen's swordsmanship was much higher than Polliver's. With a slight sideways movement, he dodged Polliver's head-on chop, and with a light sword, a straight thrust, he hit Polliver's wrist. Ah! With a scream, the sword in Polliver's hand fell to the ground. Before the sword fell to the ground, Dun Sen flipped his wrist, a nimble thrust, aimed at Polliver's throat. Another penetration kill. This sword was too fast, like a flash of light, to nail the barehanded and unavoidable Polliver to the wall. Clang! Sparks flew. Sweetmouth Rafford came over silently like a cat, accurately, blocking this fatal sword. Polliver escaped from death, covered in cold sweat, leaning against the wall gasping for breath. He felt the blood gushing out of his back, never stopping. Stop, Dun Sen! Sweetmouth said. He wanted to kill me. Dun Sen said angrily. Polliver is not wrong, he is obeying Lord Gregor's orders. Dun Sen was furious and shouted, Dog bastard, then I was wrong. You are not wrong either, but if you kill Polliver, you will be wrong. Sweetmouth Rafford spoke softly, as if his throat was too thin to raise his voice. There is no sound in Lord Gregor's room. We should be more concerned about the safety of the adults than killing each other. Lord Gregor was like a magical power with a curse for Sweetmouth Rafford, Executioner Dun Sen, and brainless Fan Polliver. Hearing that the adults had no voice, Dun Sen fiercely put away his sword, glaring angrily at the seriously injured Polliver as the end of this fight. Killing Polliver, this idiot, Dun Sen always thought so, there will be plenty of time and opportunities in the future. Now, the most important thing is the situation of Lord Gregor. Chapter 5. Polliver gasped, Sweetmouth, you can't go in. Sweetmouth and Dun Sen stopped and turned back. Polivar raised his sword with his left hand, his body trembling slightly. He had lost a lot of blood from his back and wrist, and his body was getting weaker and weaker. The sword wavered. "Only with Sir Gregor's orders can you enter." "All right, we won't go in," Sweetmouth said. Polivar felt a sense of relief, his body weakened, and the sword in his left hand fell to the ground. "Rest well, don't move." "I'll go get the maester," Sweetmouth said softly. Polivar slid down the wall slowly. Sweetmouth nodded at Dunson, who understood and went to open the door. "No," Polivar said. He tried to get up, but found his body weak, his legs and arms unresponsive. He barely managed to lift himself halfway before collapsing. Sweetmouth Rafford was as agile as a cat, moving silently. He went upstairs and called Maester Hallis down. Polivar felt someone lifting his body. He woke up and said, "Sweetmouth, you can't open the door and go in. It has to be when the seer is calm, when the seer gives the order." I know. Sweetmouth carried Polivar on his back, as nimble as a monkey, carried Polivar upstairs, and threw him into the maester's small room. Sir Gregor could not afford to have a maester to serve him. His stone castle was small, his land was small, and besides gathering a group of daredevils around him, he was not rich. The Westerland's famous gold mines? Sorry, they are all on other nobles' lands. Productive fisheries? Sorry, they are all on other nobles' lands. Hunting and farming? Hehe, they are also on other nobles' lands. Gregor's territory consisted of a small forest and a few acres of thin fields. The number of subjects who could pay taxes to him was only 11. The tax revenue from the subjects was negligible to him. So what did Gregor rely on to support his family? Entirely on Tywin Lannister. And he didn't need to support his family, because he was the only one left. His brother Sandor Clegane had never returned since he followed Tywin Lannister at the age of 8. He had married 2 wives before and after, extorting a lot of money from his in-laws for himself and his brothers to squander, but neither wife had a good ending. The first wife was punched to death by Gregor when he had a headache because she brought poppy milk a little too slowly. The second wife was unable to help him up when he was drunk, leaving him to sleep on the floor overnight. When he woke up, he scolded his wife, and she retorted, so he jumped up and knocked her to death against the stone wall. After the unclear deaths of 2 wives in succession, he never admitted to killing his relatives. No one dared to marry their daughter to him again. Gregor was also too lazy to marry another wife. Anyway, every time Tywin asked him to lead troops to patrol the Red Fork border, he would break into the riverland villages of House Tully and snatch a few women he liked for fun. As long as he didn't kill anyone, raping a few village women in the border villages, Lord Tywin would at most scold him a few words. He naturally didn't care about it at all. He led a group of daredevils without a family, and he was carefree and happy. As for the Maester Hallis in the house, he was naturally sent by Tywin Lannister to take care of him. Recently, Gregor's headaches had become a little frequent, so he specifically asked for leave to leave Casterly Rock and go home to rest. Tywin was worried about his health, so he arranged for Maester Hallis to take care of him. Gregor went home because he was no longer the Gregor he used to be. He was a transmigrated senior engineering student. The engineering student didn't want to rely on poppy milk to suppress his headache anymore. He wanted to rely on willpower to quit his poppy addiction. Everything was for survival, there was no other way. So he tied himself to the stone bed. Maester Hallis had only recently become a maester, and was previously an apprentice to Archmaester Ebrose in Tywin's household. Generally speaking, apprentices need to return to the citadel in the south, at least 5,000 miles away. The headquarters of the Maesters of the Seven Kingdoms, equivalent to a Maester's graduate school. To take the exam. Only by passing the exam can they obtain the Maester's chain awarded by the citadel. The Maester's chain is the identity symbol of the Maesters. Only the citadel of Oldtown in the Seven Kingdoms has the sole qualification to award the Maester's chain. However, the Seven Kingdoms are too large. In order to better spread knowledge and cultivate new people in various places, some Archmaesters who have obtained at least 10 metal links, one metal link represents one kind of knowledge, and the metal link is hung on the Maester's chain, can grant their local students with particularly good academic performance Maester qualifications. In the future, when there is a suitable opportunity, these junior Maesters who have been recognized and awarded a Maester's chain by outside Archmaesters must also go to the citadel of Oldtown for examination, registration, and then be awarded a true Maester's chain with the citadel's logo by the citadel. In the Seven Kingdoms, to serve the great nobles and to seek one's own status and wealth, being an apprentice is not enough. You must first have the qualifications of a maester before you can be hired by the nobles. And once you choose to be a maester, you can never marry in this life. According to the oath that the students made in front of the gods when the citadel awarded the maester's chain, they must dedicate their lives to all kinds of vast knowledge until the last moment of their lives. Of course, in fact, many maesters secretly went to brothels to fight with all their strength after swearing in front of the gods in the citadel. Polliver's back injury was not serious, but his right wrist injury was more serious. If he was not treated in time, he might not be able to use his right hand to wield a sword. This was unacceptable to Polliver, Sir Gregor's #1 fanboy, and it was also unacceptable to Maester Hallis. If he couldn't cure his first patient when he was sent out to do things alone for the first time, his maester's chain would be given in vain, and he would not be able to go back to face his teacher, Archmaester Ebrose. While the young Maester Hallis was nervously treating Polliver's sword wound, Dunson and Sweetmouth Rafford were stunned downstairs. 2 of the thick ropes binding Sir Gregor had broken, and the 2,000-pound stone bed had moved from the left to the right. The ropes around Sir Gregor were stained with blood. "Get out!" The motionless Sir Gregor suddenly spoke, his voice full of exhaustion and a trace of faint sorrow. Sir Gregor never felt sorrow, only beastly rage. Dunson and Sweetmouth Rafford were surprised, but obediently rolled out. They continued to close the door, and then stood guard in front of the door honestly, one on the left and one on the right. No one was allowed to disturb Sir Gregor, not even Maester Hallis, who was proficient in medicine and was personally sent by Lord Tywin Lannister to take care of Sir Gregor's health. Not long after, terrifying screams rang out in the room again, followed by the ground shaking again, even louder than the last time. Dunson and Sweetmouth were terrified, afraid that Sir Gregor would break free from the thick ropes and kill them both. Although Sir Gregor took good care of his brothers, it was entirely possible to do so when the Sir went crazy. Ah! 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 This terrifying scream like a dying beast echoed in Sir Gregor's room intermittently for 2 days and 2 nights. In the end, the sound became a hissing hoarse voice. Chapter 6. The room was silent. Maester Harry gently pushed open the door. His head poked inside, someone pressed on his shoulder from behind, so he lowered himself, and a second head poked in, then a third, and a fourth. 4 people, 4 heads, arranged in a uniform pattern. Their expressions were identical: surprise. They saw the bloodied ropes scattered on the ground, some broken into several sections. They saw the marks of destruction on the floor, shallow and deep scratches caused by the stone bed shifting. They saw the barely breathing idol. The Mountain. Gregor Clegane. The Mountain's eye sockets were sunken, with black circles around his eyes. Like a refugee, his hair looked as if it had been washed with cement, all stuck to his scalp, like an ill-fitting fur cap. His arms, neck, chest, abdomen, calves, and ankles, all exposed areas, were covered in bloodstains. His eyes were dull, barely alive, seemingly without breath. Polliver, his #1 fanboy, was extremely nervous, worried that Gregor was dead. He feared this. He couldn't lose the super idol-like feeling that Gregor, this ultra scum, brought him. He was Gregor's #1 fan, without equal. Dunson and Raff the Sweetling's hearts were pounding. They had never seen Gregor in such decayed state, like a lifeless giant, devoid of energy. Finally, the very young Maester Harry spoke, "Lord, still breathing." Polliver, Dunson, and Raff the Sweetling's expressions changed rapidly, from initial surprise to doubt, fear, and then sudden joy. Although they had killed many people, they hadn't noticed that the Lord was still breathing. But Maester Harry gave them the truth and confidence. Gregor was still breathing. In the minds of the 3 fanboys, given Gregor's inhuman physique and invincible bravery, as long as he was breathing, he would naturally recover quickly, without a doubt. Polliver wanted to squeeze in, but 3 people blocked him. Moreover, he was holding his right hand high, his right hand bandaged and splinted to keep it straight. Under the rational and calm control of Raff the Sweetling, Maester Harry was the first to enter the room. It was safest to let Maester Harry check on the Lord's condition first. Dunson, Raff, and Polliver followed closely behind the Maester, unconsciously lightening their footsteps. Outside the door, a servant held food, but dared not enter without being summoned. Entering rashly could cost him his life. His predecessor had been kicked to death for entering Gregor's room without permission. Although Maester Harry was Tywin Lannister's man, he dared not defy Gregor, so he approached very carefully, quietly, holding his breath. "I'm fine, don't be afraid." Gregor suddenly spoke, startling the four cautious fellows. But since when did Gregor speak so politely, saying "Don't be afraid"? These words sounded strange to Polliver, Dunson, and Raff. They were used to hearing Gregor say things like "Bastard, do you want to die?" Gregor's soft tone also made them feel uneasy, as if ants were crawling on their backs. They were more accustomed to Gregor's rough voice and abusive language. "Lord." Maester Harry craned his neck cautiously. "How do you feel?" "Feel your paralysis. Hurry up and untie the ropes if you don't want to die, you dog bastards, you sons of bitches, Cao Nima." Gregor Clegane saw the four people's cautious, mouse-like expressions, and also saw the three fanboys' uncomfortable expressions. Knowing that his subordinates were used to being yelled at, Gregor knew that speaking kindly to them wasn't like Gregor himself. Since that was the case, then he would scold them. Before transmigrating, he had argued with people online. However, these words still carried the cadence of his previous world. Ni ma bai and Cao Nima simply didn't exist in this world. So incongruous. This really lived up to that not-so-popular saying, "A lifetime ruined by studying science and engineering." If he had been a gangster in his Earth world, he would have been more in line with Gregor's personality and temperament. Furthermore, this raising of his voice made Gregor feel very weak. His own meticulous science and engineering mind recognized the many inconsistencies in just that one sentence, but the other three fanboys grinned when they heard him burst into abuse, like three hungry dogs seeing a bone, and immediately stepped forward to untie the remaining ropes binding Gregor very nimbly. Polliver, the number one fanboy, untied the ropes quickly with one hand. His back wound was very long, Maester Harry had stitched it with more than 200 stitches. This excitement and movement caused his back wound to ache sharply, tearing the newly grown flesh and causing blood to seep out, but he didn't care at all. As long as Gregor started cursing, the three fanboys knew that the Lord was fine. Once the ropes were untied, Gregor brushed aside Dunson and Raff's hands, who wanted to help him up. "Get out." He supported himself and sat up on the stone bed. "I'm hungry, bring me something to eat." As soon as the word "lousy old man" came out, Gregor felt that the language was wrong again. There was no such saying as lousy in this world. Paralysis, the language style of his previous life still dominated his mind. Stealing a glance, no one seemed to find it strange except himself. These people probably didn't hear what he was specifically cursing, it seemed they didn't care about that point at all. Maester Harry silently moved to the side. Gregor didn't see him, he knew it was best not to take the initiative to go forward. If the Lord got angry and punched him to death, Tywin would only scold the Lord a few times and fine him 2 months without gold dragons. Polliver immediately roared at the door, as if neurotic, his voice high-pitched and thin, "Bastard, get in here, slowly, or I'll shove a long stick down your throat." The servant was startled and quickly stepped in, holding a tray with a large bowl of bacon soup, as instructed by Maester Harry, to warm the stomach first, freshly baked hot bread piled into a small conical mountain, a small bowl of various fruits, and several portions of roasted rabbit, roasted chicken, roasted beef, and roasted mutton. There was also a jar of Arbor Red, the most famous wine from the Arbor. Gregor loved wine and never ate meat without it. The tray had to be quite large to hold so many things, and the servant had to have some strength in his arms. The servant quickly came in and placed the tray on Gregor's bed. He kept his head down, not daring to look at Gregor and his three fanboys, nor daring to look at the maester. The young maester was actually similar to the servant, not daring to say much or make a sound, keeping his breathing steady. Gregor looked at the servant fearing him like a demon, he wanted to comfort the servant, but he was afraid of scaring him. "All right, get out." "Yes, Lord." The servant's tense body visibly relaxed, and he quickly backed out, bowing respectfully and reverently. Gregor knew very well that the servant lived next to a murderous demon every day, and the psychological pressure was indeed too great. Gregor first drank the bacon soup. He picked up the bowl, his mouth circled the edge of the bowl, making a loud slurping sound. He circled the bowl once, and a bowl of warm bacon soup went down his throat, containing many good things, ham, carrots, various meat pieces and vegetables. Gregor put down the bacon soup. "Maester Harry," Gregor said. "Yes, Lord." Maester Harry was very young, fearful of Gregor, and trying to remain calm. What happened to Polliver's right hand? Gregor's eyes widened. He glanced at Raff the sweetling, Raff's heart skipped a beat, and he quickly lowered his eyes, looking at the ground. Chapter 7. Hallie the scholar was forced back a step by Gregor's imposing presence, then surreptitiously took another step back, my lord, rest assured, Polliver's hand can still wield a sword. Polliver, who injured you? Gregor asked Polliver, his gaze shifting from Sweetmouth Ralph to glare at Dunson. Dunson also had a faint purple-red ring around his neck, like a necklace, the mark of a sword wound after Hallie the scholar had treated him with medicine these past 2 days. Dunson retreated a step, his eyes, usually those of a ruthless killer, filled with panic, his voice lacking confidence and all traces of violence. Like a cowardly mouse, my lord, Polliver tried to take my life first. I had no choice but to stab his hand. The current Gregor was no longer the Gregor of old, he possessed high intelligence and a clear understanding of his 3 men's personalities. He had to change their habit of resorting to life-or-death duels at the slightest provocation. Polliver was a staunch loyalist, his desire to kill Dunson could only stem from one reason, Dunson's disobedience. And Dunson's defiance must have been prompted and encouraged by someone, the instigator inevitably being Sweetmouth Ralph. A fence needs 3 posts, and a thug needs 3 accomplices. Gregor thought that since he was the thug of all thugs, he needed loyal, desperate men around him. In truth, whether one was a thug or not depended on who they committed evil against. Committing evil against the wicked made one a hero, committing evil against heroes made one a villain, and committing evil against the common people and the good made one a thug. Actually, being a thug had many advantages, especially being a well-known one, as Gregor deeply understood. Before his transmigration, his girlfriend had dumped him for not being ruthless or brave enough to fight for her in the cinema. Just a day later, his girlfriend had found a rogue who knew Sanda to be her boyfriend, which had greatly stimulated the transmigrated engineering dog. Truthfully, the engineering man, now merged with all of Gregor's memories, stared at the 4 before him while eating grilled meat, drinking bacon soup, munching on bread, and guzzling red wine. All 4 were trembling with fear, as if walking on thin ice. This feeling of exhilaration was something he had never experienced in his previous life. If he had to compare this feeling, it would be like eating an ice cream when thirsty in summer or sitting by a warm stove when it snowed in winter. His 3 desperate men were overly loyal but lacked brotherly affection for each other, they needed to be trained. A lone desperate man was not frightening because his combat strength was limited, but a united group of desperate men could command attention. Unity was not strength for sheep, but Gregor knew that his few men were not sheep, but hunting dogs who dared to fight lions. Once these dogs were united into one dog, that dog could bite a lion to death. Sweetmouth Ralph, you have the best eloquence, tell me what happened, Gregor said calmly, already guessing 8 or 9 parts of the truth. It must have been Sweetmouth Ralph who gave the idea, and Dunson, in a fit of passion, wanted to enter the room, while the loyalist Polliver would definitely not agree. The 3 dogs' way of resolving conflicts was always simple, a duel. Previous duels could be stopped with a glance from Gregor. This time, he was tightly bound to the stone bed, and hallucinations from his poppy addiction naturally prevented him from interfering in their duel. Gregor's complexion improved significantly from the bacon soup's warmth in his stomach, and with the food settling, his pale green face began to regain color. He had overcome his poppy addiction, although he looked as if he had struggled back from the brink of death, haggard and exhausted, his spirit felt stronger, freer, and lighter. Poppy addiction became easier with each subsequent attempt after surviving the most crucial first time. Sweetmouth Ralph stammered, "My lord, I heard your voice sounded a little off." "So you let Dunson come in to check," Gregor said, still chewing on rabbit meat, the golden juice of the honey-glazed rabbit dripping from the corner of his mouth onto his hairy chest. Extremely hungry, Gregor abandoned the fastidiousness he had cultivated in his previous life. "Yes, my lord." Sweetmouth Ralph dared not lie. Normally, Gregor rarely intervened in these brotherly desperate brawls. "Hallie the scholar, may I ask you to go upstairs first? I would like to have a few words with my 3 officers." "As you wish, my lord," Hallie the scholar said, relieved, bowing respectfully before quickly retreating. He stepped onto the stairs and let out a long, heavy sigh. "Ralph, draw your sword," Gregor mumbled, his mouth and throat stuffed with food. Fragrant food, warm bacon soup, it really felt so comfortable, so tempting. Sweetmouth Ralph was confused, he slowly drew his sword, unsure of what his idol, Lord Gregor, wanted to do. "Dunson, draw your sword," Gregor mumbled again. Whether in his previous or current life, Gregor felt he had never eaten such delicious food. He had a huge appetite at every meal, he was really hungry for 2 days and 2 nights, and his whole body's strength was exhausted. Dunson drew his sword. "Kill Sweetmouth Ralph." Duncan glanced at Lord Gregor and saw that his eyes were serious. Duncan's sword went straight for Sweetmouth Ralph's throat. Sweetmouth Ralph was shocked. He slashed his long sword diagonally, the two swords clashing with a clang, sparks flying. The two retreated after the strike, moving their feet, slowly circling, like two hungry wolves filled with murderous intent. Sweetmouth Ralph suddenly struck first, fiercely chopping at Duncan's face, but Duncan spun his feet, deftly sidestepping. Sweetmouth Ralph's attack was just a feint, retreating as he advanced, making a break for the door. "Polliver, stop Sweetmouth!" Gregor gulped down a large glass of Arbor Gold wine, then let out a satisfied burp. He knew that he shouldn't eat too much after being starved for so long, but the food was too delicious, the bacon soup too heartwarming, and the wine too tempting. He had eaten his fill. Polliver had been waiting by the door for a long time. As a fanatical follower of Gregor, he had read the meaning in Lord Gregor's eyes when he called Sweetmouth to draw his sword, so he retreated to the door and placed his left hand on the hilt of his sword. Gregor most admired Polliver's perfect understanding of his words and actions. With a glance, a gesture, a nod, Polliver knew what Lord Gregor wanted to do. His unparalleled comprehension was only useful to Gregor alone, otherwise, his reaction and comprehension were the worst of the three desperate men. Clang! Polliver drew his long sword, his left-handed sword blocking the door. Sweetmouth Ralph, who was rushing towards the door, suddenly stopped. In his urgency, he couldn't kill Polliver and rush out. Duncan's swordsmanship was superior to his. As long as he hesitated even a little, Duncan would seize the opportunity, and he would die. Lord Gregor had personally ordered him to be killed. Duncan would show no mercy, on the contrary, he would unleash his full strength. Clang! Sweetmouth Ralph threw away the sword in his hand, turned around, and with a thud, he knelt straight down before Lord Gregor. Swoosh! Duncan's long sword pressed against Sweetmouth Ralph's throat. "Ralph, if Duncan and Polliver were your enemies right now, would you be dead this time?" "Yes, my lord." "How many swords can you defeat with one sword?" "I cannot defeat even one with good swordsmanship like Duncan." "What about Polliver, how many can you defeat?" "One." "If two swordsmen like Polliver were to deal with you at the same time?" "I cannot win, my lord." Gregor slowly got off the bed, still feeling a little lightheaded. He paused to steady himself. A person's strength is limited no matter how powerful they are, and a person's swordsmanship cannot stop multiple attacks no matter how skilled they are. Shadow cats are powerful, but why do they avoid packs of wild dogs when competing for food every time? Why? Shadow cats are solitary, while wild dogs are numerous, my lord. The large number is not the most important reason. What truly makes shadow cats afraid is that wild dogs are very united. If wild dogs are not united, fighting separately and internally, no matter how many wild dogs there are, they are no match for a shadow cat. From today onwards, Sweetmouth Ralph, you, Executioner Duncan, and loyal Polliver, must unite like wild dogs. The three of you must be as united as one person. You must remember that 3 swords are much stronger than 1 sword. Sweetmouth Ralph, when 2 swords are against you, do you need Duncan's sword or Polliver's sword to help you? Yes, my lord. I need it very much. Gregor deliberately knocked on the head of the most agile Sweetmouth. Duncan, have you understood my words? Yes, my lord. You fought each other this time while I was detoxing from poppy addiction. Duncan was almost slashed in the throat, and Polliver almost lost the use of his right hand. The root of everything lies in Sweetmouth's mouth. All 3 of you have made a big mistake. Gregor's expression suddenly changed, and he shouted sharply. Sweetmouth Ralph's face was pale, and he lowered his head in silence. Duncan shrank back in fright, hurriedly sheathing his sword and kneeling on one knee. Polliver, without waiting for Gregor's gaze to fall on him, sheathed his long sword, hurried over, and knelt down with a thud. I want your swords, from now on, to always be aimed only at the enemy, not at your comrades. Thrust the sharp swords into the enemy's heart, and pour the fine wine into the bellies of your brothers. The 3 of you are my best subordinates and my best warriors. Now, I want you to swear to me together in the name of family honor and the 7 gods that in the future, no matter what conflicts arise between you, the swords in your hands will be united against outsiders. Chapter 8. Swearing in the name of family honor and the 7 gods was the most solemn oath in this world, far more serious than making poisonous vows involving one's entire family in the world before the engineering student's transmigration. Because it involved the name of the 7 gods, these oaths were incredibly sacred. 100 times more effective than signing a college student internship contract during the holidays. Gregor looked at his 3 subordinates after they finished their oaths, a hint of a smile on his face. He knew that the old Gregor would never smile, he was stern, cold, and brutal towards his subordinates, but he intended to be his own Gregor Clegane. When the 3 subordinate officers knelt in a row, Gregor felt a surge of emotion. He wanted to tell them to stand up and swear, to say that they were brothers in arms, no need to kneel before him, that they were equals, but he restrained himself. He was a nobleman, a knight, with a title. If he had a son, he would automatically inherit his title. This was the rule of this world. Although he was a very democratic engineering student at heart, he should first abide by the rules of hierarchy in this world. Moreover, he needed to maintain his absolute authority in front of his subordinate officers. After the 3 subordinate officers finished their oaths, Gregor ordered them to stand up and embrace like brothers. Sweetmouth, Drenson, and Polliver were his 3 brain-dead fans, he was their idol, and he knew it. None of the 3 were knights, although Gregor had the right to knight them, and this was the honor every swordsman craved. But this reward, which cost nothing, should not be used casually and become commonplace. So, when Gregor saw the 3 men embracing like brothers, he controlled the impulse to knight them. Before his transmigration, he had a bit of a pushover weakness, which he needed to correct. "All right, Polliver, go upstairs and ask Maester Hallis to come to the courtyard." "Yes, m'lord," Polliver said respectfully. "Sweetmouth, go and inform my 11 households of commoners to come to the courtyard. I want to, have a little meeting." "Yes, m'lord." Polliver and Sweetmouth turned and left. Gregor tapped the stone bed with his hand. "Drenson, see how many gold dragons are under my wolfskin blanket." "Yes, m'lord." Drenson lifted the bedding and carefully felt every corner of the bed. "M'lord, 7 gold dragons, 30 silver stags, 15 copper stars. 3 types of currency circulate in West Eros, gold coins, silver coins, and copper coins. All 3 currencies are circulated as coins. Gold coins are commonly known as gold dragons. The front of the gold dragon features the portrait and name of the king ruling the kingdom when the coin was minted. The back of the coin features the 3-headed dragon emblem of House Targaryen. Hence the name Gold Dragon. House Targaryen ruled West Eros for 300 years, and the gold dragon circulated smoothly for 300 years. It was also used in the free cities across the narrow sea and in foreign lands to the east. So, although the Targaryen dynasty was overthrown more than a decade ago, the 3-headed dragon pattern on the gold coin, symbolizing the dynasty's authority, was not replaced by King Robert Baratheon's crowned stag. Silver coins are called silver stags because of the crowned stag pattern on the coins. The crowned stag is the sigil of House Baratheon of Storm's End. The current king of West Eros, Robert Baratheon I, is the head of House Baratheon of Storm's End. The founder of King Robert Baratheon's family was Orys Baratheon, the hand and close friend of the first king, Aegon I. The sigil he created was the crowned stag. But there have always been rumors that Orys Baratheon was the bastard son of the founding emperor, Aegon Targaryen I. Out of favoritism for this talented bastard, he made Orys Baratheon the first hand of the king and sent his sister, Queen Rhaenys, riding a dragon, to conquer the Stormlands with Orys Baratheon. With Rhaenys' help, Orys Baratheon killed the last Storm King, Argilac Durandon, married his daughter Argella, annexed the Storm King's territory, the Stormlands, and became the first Lord of Storm's End. From then on, House Baratheon became the great house of the Stormlands, passed down through generations, until today. Robert Baratheon, a descendant of House Baratheon, overthrew the Targaryen dynasty 16 years ago, sat on the Iron Throne in the throne room, and unified the 7 kingdoms. The Baratheon family's sigil, the crowned stag, has been printed on the kingdom's silver coins for 300 years and has never changed. Therefore, silver coins are called silver stags in West Eros. The last type of currency is a small round coin made of pure copper, called a copper star. Copper coins are called copper stars, also derived from the pattern on the copper coins, the 7-pointed star, the symbol of the faith of the 7. In West Eros, except for the North and the Iron Islands, people worship the 7 gods. In King's Landing, the capital of the 7 kingdoms, there is a great September of Baelor, which is the 7 gods' temple. 7 is the most auspicious number in West Eros because it fits the 7 gods' faith. Wealthy merchants and nobles mostly use gold coins, while commoners and the poor can only afford silver and copper coins. In some remote areas, such as the far north of the north, Beyond the wall, bartering is the main method of transaction. North of the wall, neither gold dragons nor silver stags are as easy to trade as an animal hide. The three major currency systems of West Eros were established after Aegon I Targaryen, the Conqueror, unified West Eros. Robert Baratheon adopted the existing currency system after overthrowing the Targaryen dynasty. All currency must be minted with the king's authorization and supervised by the master of coin. On this not-so-huge continent, 1 gold dragon is equal to 30 silver stags, and 1 silver stag is equal to 7 copper stars. Take all the coins and come with me to the courtyard, Gregor said. This amount of money was too little for what he wanted to do. Yes, my lord. Drenson hurriedly put all the gold dragons, silver stags, and copper stars into the money bag. My lord, why don't you take a bath and change your clothes first? Gregor stopped. Because of his brutality, and because he rarely stayed at home, living in Tywin Lannister's Casterly Rock for a long time, there were no maids left in his house, only a cook, a male servant who cleaned the courtyard stone fort, and a family affairs officer responsible for managing his small territory. Okay, you come and help me. Gregor said. Yes, my lord. Half an hour later, Gregor washed up, changed into clean clothes, hung on his exaggeratedly wide sword belt, and came to the courtyard with Drenson. His energy had recovered by 50%. In the courtyard, 11 households of commoners were waiting tremblingly, men and women, old and young, all dressed in rags, sallow and emaciated, looking like refugees. Gregor sighed inwardly, his sympathy suddenly overflowing. Chapter 9. 11 households stood in the courtyard, trembling with fear and trepidation. To their left was Sweetmouth Ralph, and to their right was Mark, the unremarkable, black-haired little clerk of Clegane Keep. When Gregor Clegane was in Casterly Rock, this little clerk Mark was in charge of everything here. Mark was essentially Lord Gregor's steward. Gregor's territory was small and his wealth meager, so calling Mark a little clerk was more appropriate than calling him a steward. Mark always carried a small notebook in his pocket, filled with the daily trivial matters he handled, including the living expenses of the 3 people in the castle, in case Gregor Clegane suddenly wanted to check them. The former Gregor Clegane could not read, but the current Gregor Clegane was secretly learning the language of this world. For someone from a highly civilized world, learning the language of this world was not difficult. Each time, Gregor only needed to say what he wanted to know about what Mark had done on a certain day at a certain time, and Mark would take out his notebook and read it to Gregor Clegane. Mark was therefore given a nickname, Notebook. Notebook's notebook was indeed very useful, because when Lord Gregor suspected him of being lazy or falsely reporting income and expenses, he would take out his notebook and explain everything to Gregor Clegane in detail. Everything that could be verified was accurate. To survive in the terrifying Clegane Keep without dying an accidental death was a very skillful undertaking. Gregor had gone through several clerks before finding such a clever, obedient, loyal, and literate young clerk. Mark was not old, 16 years old. Since becoming Gregor Clegane's family clerk at the age of 14, he had escaped death several times at the hands of Lord Gregor. Relying on his intelligence and quick wit, he finally gained the Lord's complete trust and established a solid foundation in Clegane Keep. Under Gregor's ferocity and reputation, Notebook also became fierce and cruel, and he became Lord Gregor's most loyal fan. Gregor looked at the young man and knew that this young man had a fanatical admiration for him. If he ordered this child to die, the child would not hesitate. Gregor believed that Sweetmouth Ralph, Headsman Dunson, Loyalist Polliver, and the young Notebook, their mad admiration for him was mostly a psychological disorder, similar to the famous Stockholm Syndrome. This symptom was most obvious in the young Notebook. Gregor clearly remembered that he had initially picked Mark up from the street to be a servant and abused him. Mark's journey with Gregor was fear, hatred, terror, humiliation, submission, obedience, flattery, catering, love, admiration. It completely conformed to the characteristics of the Stockholm effect. Stockholm Syndrome refers to a complex in which victims develop feelings for their perpetrators, even helping and falling in love with them. When the life and death of the weak are controlled by the strong, and the strong allow them to live or treat them a little better, they will be very grateful, and thus naturally develop a psychological dependence on the strong. This is the psychological basis of Stockholm Syndrome. In the Earth world he had transmigrated from, there were many similar cases. The victims turned against the abuser and shared the fate of the abductor, treating the abductor's future as their own and the abductor's safety as their own. They regarded the rescuers as enemies and the rapists as heroes. There was once a super criminal who had many female admirers in the outside world, and many girls were wholeheartedly waiting for that notorious guy to come out and marry him. This is a very famous psychological disorder in Earth civilization. Gregor Clegane was not sure if this world also had a definition for this disease, but he did not want to correct anything, nor could he do so. Regarding Stockholm Syndrome, Gregor only knew the principle. He was not a psychologist. He only needed to correct his own cruelty and terror. Those who followed him would naturally change with his transformation. Well, how does the saying go? The power of an idol's example is infinite. Gregor stood on the steps, with Maester Harry beside him, and his subordinate officers Polliver and Dunson behind him. Gregor only needed to glare at Maester Harry, and the young Maester would be frightened. Gregor felt that he should also have a Maester by his side. His fierce image and infamous reputation throughout the Seven Kingdoms were actually a kind of power and capital. Being good at using it could bring him a lot of benefits. A good person would explain the reason for doing something to others, while an evil person did not need to explain, just give orders. A good person would pay when buying things on the street, while an evil person would just take them. In terms of efficiency, evil people completely defeated good people. Gregor decided to keep Maester Harry by his side as his personal physician. Based on experience, he estimated that this guy would probably develop Stockholm Syndrome before long. Psychological things, invisible and intangible, but aren't they a bit evil? Gregor suddenly realized that he was enjoying the evil fun of being a supervillain. Is this also psychological? No, I need to pay attention to myself. Notebook. Gregor said. Yes, Lord. Come, give each household a gold dragon. Yes, Lord. Notebook and everyone else suspected they had misheard and couldn't believe it, but his actions were very loyal. He quickly ran up and took the money bag from Dunson's hand. There were only 7 gold dragons in the money bag, not enough to distribute. The 11 households were all stunned. Notebook opened the money bag and handed out gold coins, 1 per household. This was a huge sum for ordinary civilians. They dared not accept it, but they dared not refuse. Gold dragons were generally something ordinary families would never have. They only had silver stags and copper stars. 1 gold dragon was worth 30 silver stags, 210 copper stars, enough for a poor family to live comfortably for half a year. Notebook handed out coins to the 7th household, and there were no more gold coins in the money bag. There were only 7 gold dragons, 30 silver stags, and 15 copper stars in Gregor's money bag. Notebook only glanced back at Lord Gregor and knew what to do. He gave the 30 silver stags to the 8th household. The 8 households held the coins in their hands, none daring to put them in their pockets. They didn't know what Lord Gregor wanted to play today, but one thing was certain, they would definitely not be able to take this money away. On the contrary, they would have to write down another tax IOU when they left. Notebook shook the money bag, and the 15 copper stars jingled. There were still 3 households that had not received gold coins. Notebook looked at Lord Gregor again and saw the answer to the problem in the Lord's eyes. Notebook came to Maester Harry, held out his hand, and said, Maester, lend me 3 gold dragons. Maester Harry looked at Lord Gregor beside him. Gregor did not say a word, his face seemingly displeased. Okay. Maester Harry took out 3 warm gold dragons from his pocket and placed them in Notebook's hand. His fair hand trembled very slightly. Notebook, keep a good account. Gregor's face softened, and he spoke. Yes, Lord. Maester, I will return them to you, Gregor said to Maester Harry. No. No need, Lord. Harry waved his hand quickly, his words sincere, his eyes genuine. This is the benefit of being a great villain. You don't have to repay the money you borrow. But if you insist on repaying it, you will reap unexpected honor and gratitude. Fierceness is a morally degraded power, but it is actually very powerful. Chapter 10. I will pay you back. Gregor interrupted Sept and Harry roughly, his tone brooking no argument. He ignored Harry's fearful compliance and watched indifferently as the scribe handed 3 gold dragons to the last 3 families. Of the 11 families, the 4 women never dared to look Gregor in the eye. Gregor's infamous reputation for bullying women had spread far and wide, and any remotely eligible women among the 11 families had been married off long ago. The remaining young women were all mothers, and upon hearing that Lord Gregor had returned to Clegane Keep, they had smeared coal ash on their faces days in advance, preparing to make themselves look ugly. Gregor looked at the 4 young women and felt ashamed of his sins. To have his own people fear him like a venomous snake, Gregor's past had truly been filled with wickedness. You go back and cut down all the poppies in the fields, and plant corn, wheat, and rice instead, Gregor said. The 11 families exchanged glances, but no one dared to answer. Cutting down the crops and planting poppies had also been Gregor's order. The mountain needed a large amount of poppy milk to satisfy his needs. What trick was Gregor up to now? Why were the people so poor? Their fields were all planted with poppies, and the only buyer for the poppies was Gregor, and their lord, Gregor, only paid them a pitiful amount of money each time. This gold dragon is compensation for the loss of cutting down the poppies. You can still plant 3 seasons of corn, wheat, and rice this year. The seasons on the continent of West Eros were quite unique. A year did not have 4 seasons, but rather a season could last for several years. For example, this summer had been ongoing for the 9th consecutive year. During years of continuous summer, hard-working people could harvest 4 seasons of grain in a year, and then store it up to prepare for the potentially equally long winter. Don't just stand there, go back and cut down all the poppies, and plant rice, wheat, and corn, the scribe said in a strange, sarcastic tone. From today onwards, our land will never again be used to plant poppies, Gregor said. Yes, Lord, the people replied without any confidence. I will compensate you for your losses. I don't have any money right now, so I'll owe you the money for now, compensating you for 10 years of losses. 1 gold dragon a year, for 10 years, how many gold dragons does each family get? Scribe. Each family is owed 10 gold dragons, Lord, the scribe's math was indeed quite good. Then how much money do I owe everyone in total? Gregor had always been slow at calculations. He was illiterate and couldn't do arithmetic. The only thing he was good at was wielding his sword. Lord, you owe everyone a total of 110 gold dragons. That's a lot of money, Lord. We can't afford to pay that, the scribe said. Well, we won't discuss money-making matters here. People, if any of you have been wronged, or have been bullied by other nobles, you can speak up. I have never held a political affairs meeting at Clegane Keep in all these years. Today is the first time, but it won't be the last time. The people exchanged glances, and the women also secretly raised their heads to glance at this demon. They felt even more uneasy in their hearts. The demon was acting very strangely. The demon's face was also very strange, looking as if he had suffered a severe injury. A political affairs meeting was a meeting that every lord would hold. If the people under the lord had any grievances, disputes, conflicts with neighbors, encountered crimes, or any other problems, they would all come to the lord for a resolution. The lord was the highest local official for the people to resolve all their troubles. This is the first time we're holding a political affairs meeting, so say whatever's on your mind, even chatting about everyday life is fine, Gregor said. However, both the pitifully few people and the subordinates around him felt quite uncomfortable with Gregor's words and actions. Everything is difficult at the beginning. For Gregor, who had been out of office for a long time, holding a political affairs meeting with 11 families for the first time made him feel awkward himself. But things had to change. The current Gregor was no longer the Gregor of the past. Lord, I am very grateful for the gold coin that you rewarded me. When I go back, I will immediately cut down all the poppies and plant rice, wheat, and corn, a man said hesitantly. He was trembling with fear, and was almost kneeling down to kowtow. Gregor said, Citizen, do you have any troubles you want me to solve? He tapped his head, for example, seeds for rice and wheat. If you're afraid of being overcharged, I can order the scribe to buy the best seeds at the Lanny Sport Market, guaranteeing that no one will overcharge you. No, 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 no. Thank you for your kindness, Lord. May the 7 gods bless you, may the old gods and the new gods favor your good heart. Under your leadership, it is the greatest honor for my entire family. We can buy the seeds ourselves, we wouldn't dare trouble you, Lord. May the 7 gods also bless you. You will feel truly honored to serve me, citizen. Do you have any other requests? No, Lord. Oh. Then you can leave. Yes, Lord. The citizen immediately felt a sense of relief, as if a large stone had been removed from his body. Gregor felt a sense of frustration. It seemed that being a good person was more difficult than being a bad person, much more difficult. Everyone watched the honored citizen walk out of this terrifying courtyard. Gregor was silent for a while, then said, Since everyone has no requests, and has not encountered any violations that need to be avenged, then go back and cut down the poppies in the fields, and plant rice, wheat and corn. Yes, Lord. This time, the people answered in unison. They were all eager to escape from this place. The mountain was too unusual today, making them feel very uneasy. It was safer to leave this dangerous place as soon as possible. Thus, the 4 women left the courtyard timidly but with great speed. The rest of the people also followed closely behind. Gregor gestured to the scribe, and the scribe stepped forward and stopped an elderly man. Tom Assman, you stay. As soon as the other people left the courtyard, they quickly walked away. They all secretly felt sorry for Tom Assman, but they couldn't help the unlucky Tom Assman. Who dared to go against the mountain? No one could. Tom Assman, is there anything you want to say to me? Earlier, Gregor had seen this old man open his mouth when he asked about political affairs, but he hadn't said anything. No. Lord, Tom Assman quickly knelt on one knee. Speak quickly. Gregor frowned, you are my people. If you have been subjected to any violations, I will help you, no matter which knight offended you. Lord, the old man suddenly broke down, tears streaming down his face. Lord, my little girl, at the end of last month, 10 days ago, was taken away by the Silver Hall mine guards. Chapter 11. Silver Hall, formerly known as Silver Mountain City, is located at the eastern foot of the Silver Mountain Range, southeast of Clegane's Keep. The Silver Mountain Range is rich in silver and gold mines, with most of its territory belonging to Silver Hall. The famous Silver Mountain Range is located dozens of miles behind the Clegane family's small forest. The head of Silver Hall is Tyget Swift, a powerful noble family in the Westerlands. The Swift family's coat of arms is a proud peacock displaying its feathers on a cheese-colored background, and their family motto is unmatched. The Swift family is very wealthy due to its abundant silver and gold mines. In the southern part of the Westerlands, there are 3 famous families, who serve as the defensive forces on the southern border of the Westerlands. Craig Hall, located by the sea on the coast road, is the home castle of the Craig Hall family. Its castle is situated in the middle of a 200-mile-long primeval forest. The coast road connects Casterly Rock, the capital of the Westerlands, with Highgarden, the capital of the Reach. Highgarden is the home castle of the Tyrell family, and Casterly Rock is the home castle of the Lannister family. About 100 miles east of Craig Hall is another great noble family in the southern Westerlands, the Swift family, whose home castle is called Cornfield. The Swift family's territory is a large, fertile plain, famous for growing corn, rice, and wheat. The eastern border of the Swift family is the Silver Mountain Range. The only great noble family in the Silver Mountain Range is the Swift family of Silver Hall, formerly known as Silver Mountain City. A golden road passes by Silver Hall, connecting Casterly Rock, the capital of the Westerlands, with King's Landing, the capital of the Seven Kingdoms. The Swift family is the noble family in the Westerlands that guards the Golden Road. The 3 famous families in the southern Westerlands, arranged from west to east, are the Craig Hall family of Craig Hall, guarding the coast road, the Swift family of Cornfield, guarding the primeval forest, and the Swift family of Silver Hall, guarding the Golden Road. The 3 families are the forces lined up to defend the southern border of the Westerlands. Among these 3 families, the wealthiest is the Swift family of Silver Hall, whose 7 sons are outstanding knights of the younger generation in the Westerlands, highly skilled in martial arts. The Swift family of Cornfield has the most abundant grain, and the Craig Hall family has the strongest overall combat power. During this long summer of peace, commoners either farm or work as miners in the mines to earn money. The small commoner families under Gregor Clegane, due to long-term exploitation by Gregor, have all become the poorest of the poor. These poor people, under Gregor's orders, are not allowed to grow rice, corn, or wheat, but can only grow poppies. However, poppies are not food, so the best option for the adult men in these 11 households to survive is to go to the mines to mine. Mining for a month can buy enough food for a family for 2 months. The closest mine to Clegane's Keep is Silver Mountain. Old Man Thomas's youngest son also went to Silver Mountain to mine. If they stayed at home, they would only be waiting to die. The poppy fields do not require strong young laborers. The elderly and women in the family are enough to watch over the growth of the poppies. The men of all 11 households in Clegane's territory mine in Silver Mountain to support their families. "What's your name, girl?" Gregor asked. "Julie," Thomas answered. How old are you? 13. Have you had your moon blood? Yes, my lord. Having had her moon blood means she is a true woman. 13 is an age at which she can be married in this world. Thomas, can you take care of horses? Yes, my lord. Very well, you will take care of my horses for me, and I will give you 21 copper stars each month. As you wish, my lord. Gregor nodded, looked at the notebook, Sweetmouth Ralph, the hangman Dunson, the brainless Polliver, and finally glanced at Maester Hallis, thinking to himself, I want to capture Tyget Swift, the Earl of Silverhall, and extort hundreds of gold dragons from him, but it is not appropriate to take action for a poor girl, nor will I get support from old Tywin. But why should the number one rogue in the Seven Kingdoms talk about reason? Just do it. If a dispute arises between nobles over commoners, even if it is a murder case, such as a noble killing a commoner in another noble's territory, it will only cost about dozens of gold dragons in compensation. This money is not given to the aggrieved party, but to the lord. The lord will then take out a few gold dragons to appease his own people. Although this violates the laws of the country, commoners can still sue to the great lord and demand a life for a life, but in private, everyone basically has nobles mediating with each other, settling matters with money, which is a tacit understanding. If a dispute occurs between nobles, as long as there is no murder case, it can be settled privately with money. If a noble captures a member of another noble's family, they will not choose to kill them unless there is a deep blood feud, but rather demand a ransom. This is even more common throughout the Seven Kingdoms, not unique to the Westerlands. Gregor is too poor, and he knows he needs to make money. To make money, capturing Tyget Swift can get the most money from the Swift family. Roughly estimated, 300 gold dragons should not be a problem. 300 gold dragons, a real fortune. According to common sense, Gregor, as a noble, would not go to war with Earl Swift for a commoner girl, Julie. Although Gregor is invincible, Swift's mine guards have 1,000 men, and the family soldiers number more than 1,000. Once the war starts, Swift can gather more than 3,000 men in a very short time. Rich people do not lack people to fight. Most of the members of Swift's mine guard are mercenaries. Moreover, Swift has 7 very powerful sons with not so good personalities, all of whom are young knights. If Gregor does not rely on Tywin Lannister's guards, plus the 4 kings, he can only gather 10 soldiers from his own territory at most. Relying on brute force was Gregor's style of doing things in the past. Being brave but lacking strategy is his greatest characteristic. We set off tonight to attack Silverhall and capture Tyget Swift, Gregor said calmly. Thomas, you go feed my horse. Sweetmouth Ralph, you lead the brothers to sharpen your swords, daggers, and steel thorns. We set off tonight. This is more in line with Gregor's character. There is no need to worry about the unspoken rules of the nobility. Abducting a young girl is a serious crime according to the law, although everyone in the nobility is mindful of each other's face and does not take these things too seriously. This is a world of noble privilege, and also a social system of noble privilege. But Gregor deeply understands that he is the number one villain in the Seven Kingdoms, tyrannical and brutal, with an invincible greatsword. He does not need to talk about any kind of reason, especially since this matter is justified and he is on the side of reason. The laws of the country support him in seeking justice, although the unspoken rules between nobles override the legal provisions. Sweetmouth Ralph and the other 4 kings were all overjoyed. Attacking Silverhall and extorting money is their favorite thing to do. Maester Hallis's eyes narrowed slightly. Tyget Swift's title is still above Gregor's. Gregor is only a viscount, while Tyget is an earl. Moreover, Tyget is also helping Tywin Lannister defend the southern Golden Road and is a trusted minister relied upon by Tywin. A poor girl from a poor family, and a great noble on the southern border of the Westerlands, who is more important? Old man Thomas was greatly frightened. If Lord Gregor did this, and he killed Tyget Swift, or Lord Gregor was injured, then his whole family would be doomed. Lord Tywin would definitely blame him and kill his whole family. Don't, my lord, my girl, maybe she will come back in a few days, I was wrong, my lord. Thomas, go feed the horse, or I will cut off your head first, Gregor roared in anger. Thomas trembled in fear. Gregor glared. The old man lowered his head, his face haggard, and dared not speak again, going away tremulously. My lord, to save Julie, just send someone with a letter to Earl Tyget. When he receives your lord's letter, he will not dare to refuse to release her, Maester Hallis said tremblingly. This is actually what old man Thomas was thinking. A letter from Lord Gregor can get the little girl Julie back. Maester Hallis, we will attack Silverhall tonight, and you will come with us too. We don't have enough manpower, and I will give you a sword. Chapter 12. Black stones, black roads, black trees. In Maester Harry's eyes, everything was black. Even the air was black. He couldn't see anything, forced to rely on his horse to lead the way. He truly didn't understand how the Mountain and his 4 killers could see clearly in the woods. On the Golden Road, it was manageable, but from the moment they turned off onto the Mountain's dense forest path, he completely lost his sense of direction, time, and sight. Leading the way was old Thomas Mann, the guide for their party. Originally, they could have reached the Shalott family's Silverhall directly via the Golden Road, but the Mountain wanted Thomas Mann to take them to the mine garrison first. Old Thomas Mann was once a miner and knew these roads well. Who's there? A shout suddenly erupted from the darkness. It's me, Old Stick. Thomas Mann's voice was calm. Maester Harry immediately shrank down and lay prone on his horse, remembering a knight saying that this was the best technique for avoiding arrows in the dark. Old Stick. Yes, I'm here to deliver wine and food to Lord Alvar. Oh, so early today. Afraid your lord might be impatient. Notebook's voice suddenly chimed in with a chuckle. Before he finished speaking, Maester Harry heard an extremely brief ah sound, as if Notebook had slit the other man's throat. Maester Harry realized he was trembling slightly. He looked around, it was all darkness. He didn't know what kind of terrifying creatures were hiding within. He felt threatened everywhere. His well-trained horse continued to follow the horse in front steadily. Gregor's party consisted of 7 men and 10 war horses. War horses were not ordinary horses. They were trained for battle, knew the roads, could march quickly in the dark, and could carry heavy loads. Even on mountain paths, war horses could climb. Because of his enormous size, Gregor Clegane had 3 of the best war horses. On ordinary patrols, 2 war horses carried Gregor's armor, and 1 carried his great sword and shield. In battle, Gregor would be fully armed, and the other 2 war horses would be available for replacements. When they turned from the Golden Road onto the mine garrison's camp, Gregor put on his armor and hung his great sword. A faint smell of blood drifted in the air. Did Notebook kill someone? Maester Harry couldn't be sure if that unlucky sentry was dead or not. If they were here to reason, they had the absolute advantage, but if people started dying, things changed. They would become the unreasonable party. But Lord Mountain was always the reasonable party. His reason was his fists and his great sword. Except for Tywin Lannister, the Mountain feared no one. Suddenly, piles of firelight appeared ahead unknowingly. They had finished traversing the mountain road and reached a flat area. Rows of houses appeared ahead. The trees on both sides of the road disappeared, and the starlight appeared in the sky. The clouds dispersed, and Maester Harry's eyes could see things several meters away. Be careful of the mine shafts, Thomas Mann's voice came. On both sides of the small road, there were black, giant mouth-like mine shafts, right next to the road. The horses' hooves walked on the edge of the mine shafts. Looking down, it was dark and unfathomably deep. Small stones rolled down, and it took a long time to hear any echo. Maester Harry heard his own heart pounding. Fortunately, everyone passed safely through this ground covered with big mouths and arrived at the open space in front of the rows of houses. Everyone dismounted. The entire mine garrison was asleep. Thomas Mann pointed to a door. The Mountain walked up with a thunderous tread and kicked the wooden door to pieces with 1 foot. Bang! A loud noise. The sound startled the sleeping mine garrison. The 3 sentries who were warming themselves by the fire jumped up from the ground. Then, they saw several gleaming swords pointed at them. Sweet-Mouth Ralph was grinning, the executioner Dunson's eyes glowed green like a cat's, the fanatic Polliver's left hand trembled slightly not from fear, but from excitement, and Notebook's face was filled with a longing cruelty, his sword still stained with blood. The young Maester Harry clumsily drew his sword. Lord Mountain had ordered him to participate in the battle. He walked forward tremulously, his steps faltering, his trembling sword pointing at a mercenary's throat. Feeling it was inappropriate, the sword tip slid down, pointing at the other man's chest. Feeling that was too cruel, the sword tip slid down again, pointing at the other man's abdomen. His eyes flickered. "Don't move," he said nervously in a neurotic tone. The 4 great kings looked at Maester Harry and laughed. Thump! A figure was thrown out of the room. Boom, boom, boom. The mountain walked out of the room like a giant beast, his great sword drawn. The man who had been smashed to the ground and was almost unconscious immediately recognized him, Lord Clegane. His voice was filled with fear. More than a dozen garrison soldiers who had rushed out of the room with swords in their hands stopped at once. Inside the rows of houses, the company soldiers who were scrambling to find shoes, clothes, sword belts and weapons all heard Alvar Shalot's miserable howl, Lord Clegane. Everyone was shocked. "Where is my daughter Julie?" The mountain roared, startling the tree birds far and near, causing them to cry out and fly away. Gregor's giant foot stepped on Alvar's chest, and his great sword pointed at his head. Caught off guard, a stench of feces and urine wafted out. Tiger's most beloved seventh son, the sharpshooter Alvar Shalot, had been scared into soiling himself. From then on, his knightly honor would flow eastward like water, never to return. In extreme fear, the body's muscles would lose control. If certain key muscle groups lost control, the physiological phenomenon of simultaneous defecation and urination would occur. Lord, Lord! Alvar's mind was blank. His chest was being stepped on by the mountain's giant foot, like a huge stone pressing down, and his throat could not breathe. "Julie, who is Julie?" His voice was weak. "Lord Mountain has a daughter?" No one had ever heard of it. The four great kings and Maester Harry didn't know that the mountain had a daughter named Julie. But the horse soldier Thomas Mann knew that the mountain was using Julie being his daughter as a pretext to attack the Shalot family, which made it justifiable. Because Julie had become a noble. Gregor had decided before setting off that Julie was his daughter. As for what kind of daughter she was, he hadn't decided yet. In short, Julie was not an ordinary poor family's daughter. This was being unreasonable while still being reasonable, commonly known as a scam. Taking any small thing from the pre-transmigration Hua country civilization would be enough to make this Shalot noble suffer. Those swindling methods of not daring to help the elderly on the streets, slander, fabrication, unreasonable arguments, shameless begging plus physical violence, taking any one of them would see how you could cope. 10 days ago, your garrison passed by my Clegane keep and captured a girl in the poppy field. Her name is Julie, and she is my daughter, Gregor roared. Chapter 13. Gregor was very fierce. He didn't need to speak loudly, the name the mountain alone was enough to intimidate Alvar and his mine guards. Besides his ferocity, he had a great backing. He was a favorite of Tywin Lannister, Tywin's sword. Although Lord Tywin Lannister of the Westerlands hadn't given the Clegane family large territories or wealth, he valued two members of the Clegane family, Sandor the Hound and Gregor the Mountain. Sandor the Hound was in the Red Keep of King's Landing, serving as Cersei Lannister's personal guard. Gregor remained in Casterly Rock, as Tywin Lannister's general, holding multiple positions, one of which was to protect Tywin's safety. The Hound and the Mountain were the two fiercest dogs raised by the Lannister family, and they were very good at biting. Looking at this world through the eyes of the Earthling Gregor, this world was dark and bloody. It was a common occurrence for nobles to rape poor girls. Although the kingdom had laws stipulating that rape was a serious crime, the huge gap between law and reality had been accepted by the people. But if a poor boy dared to steal something from a noble's house, like a loaf of bread, he would either have his hand cut off or be sent to the Night's Watch at the Wall in the north. The civilization of this world was not actually civilized. Civilization was only for the privileged class, nobles. The soldiers of the Charlotte family's mine guard often went down the mountain to Lannisport, the largest and most prosperous city in the Westerlands, to have fun and then spend their last coins in brothels before returning to the mountain. The mine guard had over 1,000 warriors and 3 battalions, most of whom were mercenaries. The mercenaries came from all over the world. Not all over the country, but all over the world. Including the 9 free cities across the narrow sea and the Summer Isles in the far south, where the people's skin was as black as night. Every city in the 7 kingdoms of Westeros, including some small towns, had brothels. They were legal and paid taxes according to regulations. For mercenaries from all over the world who made their living by licking blood from their blades, raping or plundering a poor girl who looked pretty was not a big deal. Of course, they wouldn't dare if the other party was a noble. Suddenly, at the end of last month, the poor girl they had plundered turned out to be the daughter of the Mountain, the most notorious villain in the Westerlands. The daughter of a noble was a very serious matter, and more importantly, this daughter had a father who was the most untouchable, the Mountain. The mercenaries of the guard were paid to do things, and they wouldn't work hard to risk their lives for Alvar and the Mountain. The family soldiers didn't dare to move either. The mountain was notorious, famous throughout the 7 kingdoms. His great sword was 6 feet long, longer than the height of a tall warrior, and weighed dozens of pounds, and the great sword was pointed directly at Sir Alvar's head. Alvar was unable to speak. The mountain's giant foot could crush him as easily as crushing a mouse. The mountain was nearly 3 meters tall. The engineering student who transmigrated into the mountain had also spent a long time adapting to this body that was so huge that it frightened him. In his previous life, in novels and movies, a height of 2 meters was already a giant in the eyes of the transmigrated engineering dog. But he himself had transmigrated into a giant who was almost 3 meters tall. Well, in Earth civilization, the height of a normal floor was generally 3 meters. After transmigrating, the junior student once thought that what he had transmigrated into shouldn't belong to a human at all, but rather to a kind of humanoid giant beast. The mountain moved his giant foot away, and Alvar was unable to move. His breathing was weak, and the light in his eyes was fading. "Bring my daughter here," the mountain said in a deep voice. The family guards were trembling with fear. Alvar's captain of the guard personally led people to find Julie, while another group surrounded the mountain, but no one dared to draw their swords. They silently watched the knight Alvar on the ground, worried that the young knight would die. Several figures quietly retreated from the guards' chaotic ranks, slowly and gradually hiding in the black shadows. Without a doubt, they were the culprits who had plundered the poor girl. The mountain was a head taller than everyone else, and he saw those guys who were quietly trying to slip away. "Catch them!" The mountain's great sword was raised, pointing at those sneaky, hiding guys. Several centurions suddenly woke up and simultaneously gave orders. The soldiers drew their long swords with a clang and ran over. The guys immediately jumped out of the shadows and fled desperately. "Catch them! Block the entrance, hurry! The forest, the forest!" The former comrades took action one after another, surrounding and intercepting those unlucky brothers. The people who were running were criminals, and the people who were chasing were not good people either. Scholar Halley came to the mountain's side and helped Alvar up from the ground. He saw the young knight's dilated pupils. This young man was not going to live, he would stop breathing soon. He had been grabbed by the mountain in his sleep and smashed to the ground. In the mountain's thunderous roar, the great sword was swung down. He was frightened out of his wits in an instant, and the mountain's giant foot stepping on his chest only made things worse, leading to his heart failure. He was scared to death. Scholar Halley's heart skipped a beat. Although the surrounding soldiers didn't draw their swords, they would attack in droves if they knew the young knight was beyond saving, since the mountain had captured the young knight. If they attacked in droves, the first to be killed would definitely be himself. Scholar Halley straightened Alvar's head, helped him up, and beckoned for Sweetmouth Raff to come over. Of the 4, Sweetmouth Raff was the most meticulous. Sweetmouth Raff came over, and Alvar had already lost his breath, but his eyes were wide open. Sweetmouth Raff was also a killing expert, and he understood at a glance. His heart also skipped a beat. They could kill a few mercenaries or Charlotte family guards without any problem, but they couldn't kill Alvar Charlotte. Alvar was a noble. "Alvar, I'll take you to the Silver Hall to confront your father, Tyjit Charlotte." Sweetmouth Raff cursed and grumbled. He helped Alvar up, letting Alvar's arm wrap around his shoulder. He grabbed Alvar's wrist with one hand and held Alvar's waist with the other. The two looked like brothers with their hands on each other's shoulders. "Let's go, get on the horse." Gregor also saw it and his heart skipped a beat. He knew that the original Gregor wouldn't blink an eye at killing a young knight, but he himself still had some psychological obstacles. He killed someone with his own hands for the first time. Things were out of control. He hadn't thought about killing Alvar Charlotte. He didn't even think that the Charlotte family's highly skilled young knight was so fragile. He stepped on him with his giant foot, but he didn't use much force. Could it be that he was killed by that fall? But he had limited his strength in that fall too. In the commotion, the fleeing soldiers were caught. There were family soldiers and mercenaries. Julie was also brought over. The little girl was skinny, disheveled, and looked like a 7 or 8-year-old beggar girl. Horseman Tom Assman immediately stepped forward and hugged Julie, whispering, "Don't talk, follow me quickly." However, at the command of Alvar's captain of the guard, several swords were pointed at the throats, chests, backs and necks of Tom Assman and the little girl Julie. "Lord Mountain, you can take Miss Julie and this old soldier, as well as these criminals who offended Miss Julie, but please leave Knight Alvar behind." With a clatter of swords, hundreds of warriors drew their long swords and surrounded the mountain and his 4 subordinates, and a scholar. Chapter 14. A person without reverence in their heart is not brave, but foolish. In a dark and bloody world, fools don't live long, and no fool meets a good end. Gregor has reverence for life and rules in his heart. He is no longer the Gregor he once was. The young knight, Alvar Shalit, had died unexpectedly. And his captain of the guard had captured Julie and his horse soldier, Tom Assman, demanding an exchange for Alvar Knight. Hundreds of guardsmen drew their swords. They feared the mountain, but they had the numbers. Gregor was confident he could break through the encirclement alone. After a full day of rest since quitting the poppy, his energy had mostly recovered. But old Tom Assman and Julie, as well as Maester Hallis and his 4 loyal followers, would be in danger. Most of them would probably die. Gregor's original plan was to capture Alvar Shalit, take him down the mountain to Silver Hall, lure out Lord Tijit Shalit, then seize the lord, bring him to Clegane Keep, and then haggle, demanding a large ransom. This was also the common practice among the nobles of the 7 kingdoms for resolving issues: capture someone, demand a ransom. Between nobles, deaths rarely occurred. The plan was perfect. It both rescued Julie and obtained a large sum of gold dragons, a win-win situation. But who knew that the young hero and marksman Alvar was as fragile as tinder? He was so frightened that he soiled himself, and then simply died. Gregor looked at Maester Hallis. Hallis understood and whispered, "Alvar was scared to death by you, my lord." Gregor was momentarily stunned. He couldn't help but recall the Romance of the 3 Kingdoms stories he had read in his previous life in China, where the little conqueror's son Ce crushed one general to death with his elbow on the battlefield and shouted another to death. Clearly, those stories were true. He himself had not used force. His roar and downward chop with the great sword had actually scared the renowned Alvar Shalit to death. Now that the other side had proposed an exchange of hostages, what should he do? Gregor absolutely could not return as a lone wolf. Cultivating and finding loyal subordinates without any selfish motives was an extremely difficult task. "What is your name?" Gregor asked the captain of the guard, his tone icy, reminiscent of the cold in winter. "My name is Alan Shalit," the captain of the guard said, his finger twitching towards Tom Assman's sword. This was a detail. The leader was afraid. "Alan Shalit, a branch of the Shalit family. Alan, you have 2 choices. Either you kill Julie and my horse soldier, or you hand them over to me and let me take them away. I'll give you 10 breaths time, otherwise, I'll kill Alvar first, then kill you," Gregor said calmly. Gregor was definitely a ruthless person who did what he said. Maester Hallis said, "Alan, do you want to kill Alvar and provoke a feud between House Clegane and House Shalit?" This sentence was powerful. If Alan didn't release them, Alvar would be killed by him. As a branch of the Shalit family, they relied on the Shalit family for their livelihood. 3 breaths have passed, the voice of the notepad chuckled. 5 breaths. Sweetmouth Ralph laughed. Dunson's long sword pressed against Alvar's throat, his hand gripping Alvar's brown hair. 7 breaths, Lord Alan. Once 10 breaths are up, kill Alvar, Gregor said calmly. "Yes, my lord." Dunson's voice was impatient as he licked his lips. Gregor's men were as notorious as he was. "All right, I'll let you go down the mountain," Alan Shalit shouted. His back was soaked in cold sweat, and beads of sweat also appeared on his forehead. The swords pointed at the horse soldier and the little girl were lowered together. The hundreds of swords surrounding the mountain were also lowered together. The tense atmosphere that was about to erupt immediately eased. This was just a mine guard camp. There was another mine guard camp dozens of miles away. Hundreds of swords couldn't stop the mountain, but they could stop his men. Tom Assman hugged the little girl Julie and strode over. "Alan, are these the criminals who kidnapped my daughter?" "Yes, my lord." "They have confessed?" "Yes, my lord." "Poliver, bring them over here." A total of 5 soldiers were brought over. Without the mountain saying anything, they automatically knelt down, begging for mercy, claiming they were willing to serve the mountain, as servants, as soldiers, as slaves, all willingly. Gregor looked at the little girl. Such a little girl, in Chinese civilization, would be a young girl. An innocent young girl. Julie. The little girl struggled out of Tom Assman's arms. She already knew everything from Tom Assman's whispers. The little girl drew the short knife from Tom Assman's waist, facing Gregor. "Father, can I deal with the beasts who harmed me?" Gregor was slightly surprised. The little girl's words and courage surprised him. Gregor knew very well what terrible things would happen to such a little girl when she was kidnapped to the mountains by these strong soldiers. Generally speaking, such a little girl would have been devastated and lost all will to live. She would not have hatred in her heart, only fear, a fear worse than death. Gregor nodded. Under the glare of hundreds of bright eyes, the little girl walked to the 5 criminals kneeling in a row. She ordered them all to stand up, and then had Alan's soldiers hold them. This detail made Gregor feel the little girl's uniqueness again. Perhaps the genetic structure of people in this world was different, regardless of gender, they were more martial and stronger. "Don't worry, I won't kill you," Julie said through gritted teeth. A little girl speaking through gritted teeth seemed somewhat comical and unreal no matter how you looked at it. But no one laughed. Julie's short knife cut open the first man's pants, and with one cut. Amidst the screams, Gregor himself felt a chill all over his body. Soon, 5 writhing and screaming bodies fell to the ground. Julie walked up to Alvar, who was staring with a strange expression, carrying the short knife. "Lord Alvar, you ordered me to be captured, so I'll save a cut for you first." On the Gold Road, Maester Hallis was cautious. "My lord, I suggest we return to Casterly Rock." Gregor only snorted, and Hallis dared not speak again. Sweetmouth Ralph rode the same horse as the deceased Alvar, holding Alvar's body to prevent it from falling. Far away, Alan Shalit followed slowly with a dozen family guards. Gregor and his party travelled along the Gold Road, at a pace that was neither fast nor slow, heading towards Silver Hall. At dawn, the group of 9 people and 10 horses arrived at the foot of Silver Hall City. As the western stronghold guarding the Gold Road, Silver Hall was built magnificently. The city walls were made of giant rocks, built against the mountains and rivers, and were impossibly high. "Tijit Shalit, I've brought Knight Alvar Shalit back to you," Gregor roared, gathering his energy. Far and near, in the Silver Hill Mountains, countless birds and beasts were startled. Birds flew away in fright, and beasts hid. Soon, guards appeared on the city walls. The Silver Hall guards were all Shalit family soldiers, and their loyalty and combat power were much higher than the mine guards. Maester Hallis was so frightened that his face was ashen. He glanced at the others. Apart from the mountain's 4 King Kongs, who were foolishly nonchalant, the horse soldier Tom Assman was also clenching his fists nervously. To Hallis's surprise, the little girl Julie, covered in blood, was actually very calm. When Maester Hallis's eyes met Julie's, a chill inexplicably rose in his heart. Chapter 15. Teams of guard soldiers began to appear on the city walls. These men had much better cloaks, armor, and weaponry than the mine guards. Most of the mine guard soldiers did not have a complete set of steel armor, relying mainly on leather, bracers, and leggings, and even high-quality helmets were rare. The city gates opened, and a troop of men and horses rushed out over the drawbridge, led by a middle-aged man with a square face, beard, shoulder-length brown hair, and eyes like stars. The banner behind him featured a vivid peacock displaying its plumage proudly on a cheese-colored background. A displaying peacock, the crest of House Sarwick. However, compared to their family motto, unsurpassed, Gregor couldn't help but feel it was inappropriate. How could a displaying peacock represent unsurpassed? Swords and battleaxes would be more fitting for the motto unsurpassed, right? Unsurpassed. Gregor's heart stirred. Because of their low level of literacy, House Clegane, although bearing 3 black dogs as their sigil, had no family motto. The 4 words unsurpassed were very fitting for his immense strength and superb swordsmanship. Since House Sarwick dared to call themselves unsurpassed with just a displaying peacock, why couldn't House Clegane use unsurpassed as their family motto with 3 black dogs? Although Gregor was a transmigrated engineering student, his literary knowledge was not lacking. Unsurpassed was precisely what he thought in his heart. Compared to the civilization of this agricultural era, the university engineering student from the electronic technology era believed that his knowledge was several civilization levels higher than everyone else in this world. "Lord Gregor," the man reined in his horse, his expression revealing nervousness and vigilance, "why have you captured my 7th brother? He kidnapped my daughter, Julie, from Clegane Keep, and he and his 5 brothers raped her for more than 10 days, Adam. I want to see your father and demand justice. Tijit Sarwick, get out here!" Gregor roared, his voice like rolling thunder, echoing through the mountains, "Get out here! Here! Here!" Adam Sarwick, the eldest of Tijit Sarwick's 7 sons, the heir to Silver Hill, and the future head of House Sarwick. Adam's face changed drastically. He had never heard of Gregor having a daughter, but with Gregor's infamous history of raping women everywhere, it wouldn't be strange if he had a few bastards. Adam exchanged glances with his brothers behind him, and all of them looked deflated and frightened. This matter was indeed very troublesome. Getting involved with the great villain of the Westerlands, Alvit was lucky to be alive. Adam saw the drooping head of his brother on horseback, bound hand and foot, looking like he had suffered a lot. He was surrounded by Gregor's men and riding with a grinning fellow. "Lord Gregor, if this is true, we will take responsibility. Please come into the city, and let House Sarwick first prepare a banquet for you. Once the matter is investigated, we will definitely give you a fair resolution," Adam said carefully. "You are not worthy to speak to me. Tell your father to get out here." Adam tried his best to restrain himself. Gregor had already told his father to get out 3 times, "Lord Gregor, it's not that my father is being rude, but my father is not in the castle." "Oh? Then where did he go?" Lord Jonaran, the hand of the king in King's Landing, died suddenly of illness. After King Robert Baratheon held the funeral, he summoned nobles and courtiers from all over to accompany him north to Winterfell, the castle of Lord Eddard Stark of the North. "My father received orders from Lord Tywin Lannister of Casterly Rock, as a minister representing the Westerlands, to go to King's Landing to see King Robert." Gregor's heart skipped a beat, knowing that the story of A Song of Ice and Fire that he knew had begun. Lisa Tully, the wife of Lord Jonaran, poisoned her husband at the instigation of Littlefinger, Peter Baelish. King Robert's small council was missing a hand of the king. King Robert Baratheon went north to Winterfell to invite his best brother, Eddard Stark, to come south to King's Landing to be his hand of the king. The hand's badge of office, worn on the left breast of his official robes, was a golden hand, exquisitely crafted, lifelike, and several inches in size, so the hand was also known as the king's hand. The hand of the king was second only to the king and above all others, the chief advisor and enforcer of the king on the Iron Throne in King's Landing. The duties of the hand of the king included issuing orders on behalf of the king, exercising power, commanding the armies, administering justice, and convening the small council to discuss and manage the country's internal and external affairs. When the king was unable to attend court due to illness or absence, he would sit on the king's seat, the Iron Throne, as acting ruler. His power was the greatest among the courtiers, reaching the pinnacle of officialdom. Eddard Stark of the North was a rare, honest and honorable man. His unyielding character would bring him death and his family destruction. He had a strong prejudice against House Lannister of the Westerlands and deeply loathed Gregor himself. Robert went north, Eddard went south, and the great chaos of the Seven Kingdoms began. "Oh, Count Tyget is not here, then you are in charge of Silverhill." "Yes, Lord. Since you are the acting head of the family, fine, first take your damned brother away, and then I will settle the score between House Sarwick and my daughter." Adam Sarwick was stunned. He did not expect Gregor to agree to release his 7th brother so readily. The other brothers were also surprised and delighted. They were also familiar with the rules among nobles. Hearing Gregor say this, he just wanted money. Looking at the thin and gaunt little girl on horseback with dirty and torn clothes, it was clear that she was just an insignificant bastard daughter of Gregor's. Whether this daughter lived or died was of no concern to Gregor. His real purpose was to get money. The Sarwick family had no shortage of money. Behind Silverhill lay hundreds of miles of mountains, full of gold and silver mines. It was no exaggeration to say that the hundreds of miles of mountains were his family's accumulated wealth. "Thank you, Lord, for your understanding. Our family will definitely compensate according to your requirements," Adam Sarwick said quickly, expressing his gratitude. He signaled with his eyes, and 2 brothers urged their horses forward to bring back their 7th brother, Alvit. Gregor swung his great sword. "Get lost, the 2 of you are not qualified. Adam, you come, and I will give you Alvit." "Yes, Lord." Adam rode forward, Gregor stepped aside, and suddenly reached out, gently lifting Adam off his saddle, as if a giant grabbing a child. His arm clamped down, and Adam's bones creaked all over his body, on the verge of falling apart, and he couldn't breathe. The other brothers were shocked. Clang, 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 a long sword was drawn, 2 spears were raised, and 2 battle-axes were held horizontally. More than a dozen guards drew their long swords in unison, the sword light flashing, filled with murderous intent. Gregor paid no attention at all and shouted, "Alvit Knight is returned to you, but I will take Sir Adam back to Clegane Keep. Prepare 1,000 gold dragons to redeem him." Gregor drew his great sword with a clang, and the great sword was placed on Adam's neck. "Get out of the way, or I'll cut off his head." Chapter 16. Life is full of disappointments, 8 or 9 times out of 10. Gregor felt this deeply. As an ordinary college student who transmigrated to this world, his first action was simply to save a little commoner girl in his territory and legitimately extort some starting capital. But he scared the noble young master Alvar Charlotte to death in a night raid. That's just one of life's disappointments. Now that the deed was done, if he didn't want to pay with his life, he had to forcefully crush everything in his path. Fortunately, this world also respected another principle, the fist. In his previous life, in China, Earth civilization also followed the same principle: truth lies within the range of artillery. Gregor's great sword was resting on Ado's neck, a bluffing tactic. If he wanted Adu dead, he could kill Adu Charlotte as easily as Sun Ce, the little conqueror of the Three Kingdoms, could crush someone with his elbow. Holding Adu Charlotte's legs, he could tear Adu in two. But people preferred to see obvious threats, like a great sword resting on Ado's neck. Whether it was Alvar's guard behind him or the 5 sons of the Charlotte family in front of him, none dared to move rashly. Although Gregor had just quit drugs and was in poor physical condition, it wouldn't be difficult to kill these people. Just 1 sword each for the 5 Charlotte boys. "Don't move, save Alvar first," Adu said hoarsely. The eldest brother was indeed the eldest brother. Gregor tilted his head, and Sweetmouth Raff picked up Alvar and threw him onto the grass beside the Golden Road. Alvar rolled a few times and then stopped moving, like a dead man. He was indeed a dead man. "Alvar is returned to you, we're leaving," Gregor said. His team wasn't strong: an old horse soldier, a severely injured little girl, a polyvore with a back injury and a right arm injury who could only use his left hand to wield a sword, Gregor himself who had only rested for a day after quitting drugs and whose physical strength was far from its peak, and a Halley scholar whose grip on the sword was questionable. Behind him, Alvar's guards opened a path. Halley scholar, Sweetmouth Raff and the others turned their horses, and the group quickly retreated with the new hostage. Adu Charlotte. Gregor and his great sword and warhorse guarded the rear. Riding on the tall warhorse, he looked like he was riding on a toy horse, his legs almost touching the ground. Beside him was the motionless Alvar lying on the grass. No one dared to approach and pick up Alvar. When the team had retreated far away, turned the corner, and disappeared from sight, Gregor slowly backed away, snorted angrily, and rode away. Alvar's guards and the 5 Charlottes rushed over, jumped off their horses, and the second brother picked up Alvar, 7th brother. Alvar's eyes were wide open, his pupils dilated. "Quick, call the scholar," the second brother said anxiously. He looked up at the Golden Road. Gregor's warhorse was so fast, it had turned the corner and disappeared from sight behind the trees. The third brother jumped on his horse and galloped into the city, shouting, "Scholar, Miller Scholar!" Guard Captain Alan Charlotte reached out to test Alvar's breathing and felt for his heart, saying in a hoarse voice, Lord Alvar is dead." His voice was trembling. He was Alvar's guard captain, a distant cousin, and it was his duty to protect Alvar's safety. Whoosh! A sharp dagger cut the ropes binding Alvar, and Alvar's limbs scattered, limp and powerless. "Alvar!" The 6th brother choked, "Alvar, I will avenge you." He raised his axe and mounted his horse, but everyone held his reins tightly, and the 4th brother stretched out his hands in front of his horse. "6th brother, you are no match for Gregor." "3rd brother, if you're afraid of death, get out of the way. What's the point of dying in vain?" "7th brother, Alvar is already dead, we have to let the scholar find out the cause of his death. A life for a life, Gregor must die." "He's not far ahead, there's still time to chase him down now," the 6th brother roared. "None of us are his match, even if we finally kill him, how many more of our brothers will die? Maybe all of us will be killed by him." "Don't forget, our eldest brother Adu is still in his hands," the 4th brother said calmly. "We can't fight? We dare not chase? How can we kill Gregor?" the 6th brother said angrily. "Gregor is Tywin Lannister's general, we'll go to Casterly Rock and ask Lord Tywin to do us justice," the 4th brother said. "Tywin will only favor his own vicious dog," the 6th brother sneered. "I bet Tywin will at most lock up that vicious dog for a few days, order him to apologize to us, and then the matter will be over." "Yes, Tywin will favor his own vicious dog, and we can only accept it. But Gregor is a boor, a villain. To kill him, we can't take it by force, we can only use schemes," the 4th brother said slowly. "I'll go kill him, Alan Charlotte said readily, I am Lord Alvar's captain, I failed to protect him, I'll go kill Gregor to avenge the Lord. How can you kill Gregor? The fourth brother stared at Alan and said. 1,000 gold dragons, a jar of fine wine. Poison the wine, I'll drink with Gregor, he won't suspect it, Alan Charlotte said. Good idea. The fourth brother said. Alan, you will die too, the sixth brother shouted. Lord, if Gregor is to die, it's impossible for no one to pay with their life. Gregor is Tywin's general, his most trusted vicious dog. If Gregor dies and no one pays with their life, Tywin will be furious and retaliate most severely. And I am just a distant branch of the Charlotte family, and my home isn't in Silverhall, so it's easier to disassociate from the Charlottes of Silverhall. I am Lord Alvar's guard captain, responsible for protecting his safety. I swore an oath when the holy oil was applied in the September of the Seven, that I would give my life for Lord Alvar when necessary. My death with Gregor is my personal revenge for the Lord, fulfilling my sacred oath, and has nothing to do with the Charlotte family of Silverhall. If any of you lords kills Gregor, the entire Charlotte family of Silverhall cannot disassociate themselves. The Charlotte family does not have the strength to oppose Lord Tywin, and if it is not handled well, the escalation of the conflict will bring unpredictable disasters to the Charlotte family. Tywin rose to prominence at the age of 18, destroying the two most powerful nobles in the Westerlands. To this day, only weeds grow on the territories of those two nobles, and there are no people. Tywin also does not allow anyone to set foot in those two rich, barren territories filled with gold mines. The famous song The Rains of Castamere is sung throughout the Seven Kingdoms, telling the famous story of Tywin destroying two powerful nobles in the Westerlands. Tywin governs the Westerlands with an iron fist, and no one dares to offend his authority again. Okay, let's do it this way. Alan, after your death, I will have your eldest brother Adu take your son as a squire. When the child is 16, the Charlotte family will knight him. I will take care of your parents. If your wife does not want to remarry, no one will dare to propose to her, the fourth brother said. Thank you, Lord. Chapter 17. Lord. Scholar Hallis spoke cautiously. The sound of horses' hooves echoed, the group advancing neither too fast nor too slow, with no pursuers behind them. Scholar Hallis slowed down to walk alongside Sir Gregor, who was guarding their rear. Gregor stared at Scholar Hallis. If House Charlton accuses you, Lord, have you considered your strategy? What good ideas do you have? To be honest. Gregor scrutinized Scholar Hallis until the scholar nervously turned his gaze forward. Indeed, deceiving Tywin, with his high intelligence, would be extremely difficult. In this primitive agrarian civilization, which also possesses supernatural powers, Gregor himself didn't feel particularly secure. Consider it, in the north of this world, there are undead creatures like zombies that cannot be killed, and others composed of ice elements, possessing supernatural powers. The children of the forest, a humanoid race, live in the haunted forests of the north. Green seers, like the three-eyed raven, can possess animals with their mental will, and true giants in the mountains of the moon stand 4 meters tall, making Gregor look like a dwarf in comparison. Soon, on the eastern continent of Essos, 3 dragons that breathe fire will appear. Melisandre, the red priestess who can see glimpses of the future, will cross the narrow sea and land on Dragonstone. Across the narrow sea in the free city of Bravus, there are faceless men, top assassins who can change their shape and face at will. Various expensive, invisible poisons are constantly being researched and sold worldwide from Lys, the base for poison development, and there are all sorts of strange gods and faiths in the world. However, most of the time, the gods in this world do not answer their devout followers. People must rely on themselves at all times. So, what can Gregor rely on? If it weren't for Tywin's power protecting him, Charlton's army would surely attack the small Clegane keep. He is invincible in close combat, but how could he withstand thousands of Charlton's arrows? His armor and shield can protect him, but what about his horse? What about his followers and servants? In a year, the 7 kingdoms will be in chaos, embroiled in civil war. 2 years later, the others will lead hordes of undead into the haunted forests of the north. 4 or perhaps 5 years later, the long summer will end, snow will fall in autumn, and winter will come, and all humanoid life, human life, animal life on the continent of Westeros will face a dark moment of life and death. The others, leading the undead warriors they created. The Whites, resurrected after death into unkillable zombie-like creatures, will use the power of winter to attack the 7 kingdoms. That moment will be the end of the civilized world. Gregor doesn't even know if he will live to see the others attack the Seven Kingdoms. Without making changes, in 2 years, in the 300th year after Aegon's landing, he will end his life as a human being at King Joffrey's wedding. Leaving here, leaving the continent of Westeros to go to the free cities across the narrow sea, all he could do is become a mercenary. Spending his days mingling with a bunch of mercenaries who don't speak the same language, spending all their money and getting drunk whenever they can, fighting and killing for a wealthy noble he's never met. No ideals, no future, no home, no faith, nothing but killing, burning, drinking, and sleeping. For perhaps a single gold coin, he would have to take any job he didn't like. It hasn't come to the point where he has to flee this land yet. If he doesn't flee, then he needs a legion completely his own. Just like House Charlton, who can mobilize 3,000 warriors at a moment's notice. These warriors only fight for their lord. Gregor has never felt so urgently the need for a legion. This legion must have at least 1,000 men. The warriors of the nobles usually come from the commoners in their territory. They may be farmers, hunters, fishermen, craftsmen, dockworkers, miners, servants, or any other occupation, but as soon as the lord issues a call to arms, they must put down their work, take up their weapons and armor, and enlist, following their lord to war. Many warriors don't have a decent set of armor, and the swords they use are of poor quality. Such a legion is not strong in combat. They also have very little military training and cannot compare to mercenaries. This is a fundamental reason why great nobles like to hire professional mercenaries. Mercenaries don't do any other work. Their regular job is to train in swordsmanship, horsemanship, and archery. Once they have a job, they have to shed blood and fight, providing strong violent protection, which further hones the mercenaries' combat power and professional military skills. In comparison, the military quality of a legion temporarily assembled from farmers, fishermen, or craftsmen with little military training cannot compare to that of a mercenary company. But mercenary companies cannot be compared to family soldiers. Mercenary companies have high combat power, but because they are paid to do things, their relationship with their employers is purely a monetary transaction, with no connection to loyalty, sacrifice, or national sentiment. In a word, they can help you fight, but they won't risk their lives for you. Family soldiers, on the other hand, possess qualities that mercenaries completely lack: loyalty, sacrifice, unity, and honor. Gregor's territory is too small, and he can't even summon a few miners to fight for him when something happens. If he wants to build a family legion, first he needs money, second, he can't stay by Tywin Lannister's side earning 10 golden dragons a month anymore. 10 golden dragons is a fortune for ordinary people, but in the eyes of nobles, especially in the wealthy Westerlands, it's very poor. The money Gregor earns in a month with Tywin isn't enough for Tywin's deformed second son, the imp Tyrion Lannister, to spend 3 days in a brothel. Many times, the imp spends 10 golden dragons a day, and if he's happy, he'll give the prostitutes more than just 10 golden dragons. Gregor must find a way to make big money. How to make money in the Westerlands? Establish a small mercenary company to take on the job of guarding mines? Find opportunities to trade in the markets of Lanny Sport? Rob gold mines in disguise? Increase taxes wildly? Use the knowledge learned from his previous life to invent things? Gregor's mind was in chaos. Gregor silently looked at the azure sky. The sky was blue, the air was fresh, without the hazy smog of his previous life, but there was no mobile phone network or industrial machinery either. Every civilization has its own troubles and crises. Scholar Hallis, I need to write a letter to Lord Tywin. Yes, Lord. What should I write? Just say that my headaches have worsened and I need to rest at home for a long period of time. Yes, Lord. Also, mention that Alva Charlton snatched away my daughter Jyll and raped her in the Silver Hill mines. Yes, Lord. What about Alva Charlton's accidental death? Should I mention it? Mention it. How should I mention it? We went to find Alva Charlton, asking him to return my daughter. I grabbed Alva and gave him a light shove, and his heart suddenly gave out, and he died. Heart disease. Yes, heart disease. Didn't you learn about heart disease from Grand Maester Pycelle? I haven't dissected a corpse yet. Scholar Hallis blushed slightly, his eyes flickering. Gregor wasn't sure if heart disease existed in this world. Alva's sudden death from heart disease was purely accidental. After the accident, we returned Alva's body to Silver Hall, but the Charltons attacked us, so we had to take Adam Charlton hostage back to Clegane Keep, demanding that House Charlton apologize and compensate for snatching my daughter Jyll and raping her. Lord Gregor, do you think Duke Tywin will believe what's written in the letter? I don't know, but just write it like that. Yes, Lord. Chapter 18. The little girl in front stopped her horse, separated from Sweetmouth and his group, and waited for Gregor and Maester Harry by the roadside. Gregor secretly paid attention to this little girl. He didn't allow himself to think about what the little girl had experienced in the mountains. If he had personally experienced something similar, and if he were a little girl, he would feel like it was the end of the world. But this little girl's resilience was like the black stone of Silver Hill. As the little girl's lord, Gregor had no impression of this little girl named Julie before this. Father. The little girl said. Gregor felt a little awkward. His previous life was just a student who hadn't married, an ordinary dog who had been dumped by his girlfriend. He had only merged with Gregor's soul memories and obtained Gregor's body. The idea of obtaining body felt like two men having a strange gay relationship across time and space, which was a bit awkward. Gregor hummed. Father, kill me, the little girl said again. I'm not your father. Maester Harry was also very surprised. Julie, call him my lord. Father Lord, please kill me. Gregor suddenly felt his head getting a little big. From a college dog to the #1 villain in the Seven Kingdoms, he hadn't completed the full fusion, especially when it came to creatures like little girls. I won't kill you. Not kill me. Not kill you. Gregor was very certain. Why should I kill you because of the pile of trouble you caused? I'm not the Gregor I used to be. If Father Lord won't kill me, then I'll follow you, the little girl said. Then the little girl slowed down her horse, naturally squeezing Maester Harry to the back, so that she and Gregor were riding side by side. This was another small detail proving that the little girl could ride a horse and had some little schemes. Gregor looked down at Julie. Her yellow hair was dry and sparse, her chin was pointed, her face was small, she had single eyelids, amber eyes and thin lips. She didn't have a bit of childishness, revealing a composure that was absolutely inconsistent with her age. This reminded Gregor of that wild girl from the Stark family in Winterfell in the north. Arya Stark. If Julie had also come from a noble family, would she have grown into a ruthless character like Arya, or even more powerful? This reminded Gregor of a saying, are kings, dukes, generals, and ministers born with a special seed. Julie, have you practiced swordsmanship? No, but I've watched people use swords. Then have you used a knife? Yes. How did you use it? To kill chickens, ducks, pigs, and goats. Killing people should feel about the same. Don't talk about killing people when you're so young. The transmigrated Gregor discovered that his people's teacher awareness had inexplicably taken over. Julie's small eyes glanced sideways. Is Lord Mountain afraid of killing people? Gregor, you're still a child. I'm not a child, I'm a woman. The little girl Julie turned to look at Maester Harry behind her. Maester, get me moon tea when we get to Clegane's Keep. Moon tea, a medicinal tea used by women to induce abortion. Maester Harry stammered, Julie, are you pregnant? He was shocked by the little girl's frankness, or rather, lack of shame. I don't know, the little girl said in a matter-of-fact tone. Gregor felt like something deep inside him was a little uneasy. This didn't fit his image as a chief villain and his reputation for brutality. Maybe he hadn't saved a second little Arya, but had saved a little Gregor. Little Gregor, at Julie's age, had already burned his younger brother Sandor's face and broken his own father's neck in the small woods. Neither of them were normal people. Birds of a feather flock together. Does my reputation as the #1 villain in the Seven Kingdoms only attract similar people and things? Gregor didn't know much about moon tea, he only knew that it was used by women to induce abortion. Ahead in the distance, Sweetmouth Ralph hummed a little tune, and the scribe sang vulgar songs, a noble lady's dinner. They sang one song after another, all of which were vulgar songs from Gregor's previous world, and finally, even Denson, who couldn't sing, and Polliver, who could only hum, joined in. The hostage, Adam Charlett, who was in the middle of the four, also sang along, a lewd smile on his stiff face. It can be seen that whether they are nobles or soldiers, as long as they don't pretend, men's interests are actually the same. Only the horse soldier Thomas Mann seemed worried and anxious. Night. Maester Harry was absent-minded. As soon as they returned to Clegane's Keep, they sent out ravens, and the ravens had already flown back, but there was no reply from Lord Tywin. This made Maester Harry uneasy, wondering what Lord Tywin thought after reading the letter he wrote. Lord Tywin sent Maester Harry to follow Gregor, not only to treat Gregor's headaches, but also to act as one of Lord Tywin's eyes. Clegane's keep is less than 100 miles from Casterly Rock, and the ravens travel quickly. At the table, Adam Charlotte was already getting along famously with Sweetmouth Ralph, which was Sweetmouth Ralph's forte. The little girl Julie really didn't go home, but knelt beside Gregor, helping Gregor cut meat, spreading honey on bread, serving bacon soup, and pouring wine, like a little padded jacket for her dad. Her real father, Thomas Mann, sat at the lower seat, but Julie never took the initiative to communicate with her father. In the afternoon, Sweetmouth Ralph taught the little girl etiquette, the executioner Denson taught the little girl the key to holding a sword sideways, Adam Charlotte taught the little girl archery. Gregor slept soundly in his bedroom, sleeping until Polliver came to call him for dinner. He had been busy for most of the day after getting off drugs and needed to rest. The food in this world is said to be very rich, with no shortage of various meats. You can often hunt and eat wolf meat, bear meat, wild boar meat, and shadowcat meat as big as tigers, which you can't eat in Earth civilization, but there is one thing, the meat is not delicate, the salt granules in various seasonings are large, and there is a lot of sand. Here, they are near the sea, but everyone actually eats mineral salt. This made Gregor miss the snow-white fine salt from Earth civilization, with added iodine. Could the salt here be used as a business, refined, with no sand and no bitter taste, beautifully packaged in bags and sold to the nobles like exquisite gifts? The answer should be feasible, because the salt here is bought and sold in salt ponds, and the workers unload and load the trucks barefoot in the salt ponds. Whether they are nobles or commoners, the salt they buy is loaded from the salt pond with wooden measuring instruments. Bulk cargo. To refine mineral salt into salt as fine and white as sand, no chemical technology is needed, pure physical methods can do it, which is a very simple high-temperature filtration to remove slag and dust, and cooling crystallization. Sea salt can also be boiled on the coast. It's just that Gregor doesn't want to make this his main business. He wants to mine for gold. Being in the Westerlands and not thinking about mining gold mines must mean there is shit in your brain. But there are no gold mines or silver mines on Gregor's territory. His territory is pitifully small. The Westerlands have many mountains, gold and silver, but the mountains all have owners. The only vacant and ownerless gold and silver mine lands are those of the two major families that were exterminated by Lord Tywin, the Rain family of Castamere and the Tarbeck family of Tarbeck Hall. The gold and silver mine lands of the two major families have been abandoned for 38 years. Chapter 19. Stealing gold mines, or developing them, requires people first and money second. Gregor has no people and no money. As long as there is money, people are not a problem, so in the final analysis, the problem is the lack of money. Gregor watched Adam Sarwick drinking and getting chummy with Sweetmouth Ralph. Sweetmouth Ralph's sweet mouth is liked by noble lords and also by Lord Tywin. There is an idiom in Chinese civilization, flattery will get you everywhere. The meaning of this idiom also applies to the civilization of this world. The only slightly inappropriate thing is that Sweetmouth Ralph is a commoner. Gregor decided to focus on Sweetmouth Ralph, to use his smooth-talking abilities to socialize with the nobles. In the future, on the road to making money and building power, Sweetmouth Ralph's verbal skills will also be needed. In his previous life, when interning as a salesman in college, the company manager liked to emphasize one point at the morning meeting: marketing ability. Marketing ability is divided into two levels, one is low-level, selling products, the other is high-level, selling oneself. Sweetmouth Ralph is born with the advanced level of marketing ability, selling himself. Gregor did what he thought of and never procrastinated. He is a villain, a rogue, a bad person. These labels have a great advantage, that is, bad people do things without scruples. Gregor stood up. He was too tall and too strong, like a god. Thomas, go get my sword. Yes, my lord. Thomas was respectful. The people who were drinking and eating meat were all frightened. Adam Sarwick's face changed even more. He was afraid of Gregor, he didn't want to die. He looked at Sweetmouth Ralph with pleading eyes, hoping that Sweetmouth Ralph could say a good word for him in front of Gregor, for the sake of the friendship they had established by telling brothel stories and singing obscene songs together. Thomas brought the heavy greatsword. The greatsword was longer than him, and he held it with great difficulty. Gregor grabbed the 2-meter-long greatsword with one hand. Ralph, kneel down. Sweetmouth's full name is Ralph. Ralph is the name everyone is used to calling him. He is a commoner without a surname. It is very common to have a name without a surname in this world, of course, only for commoners and poor people of humble origin. Ralph got up and knelt on one knee. I now bestow upon you the honor of knighthood. Please, Maester Hallis and Sir Adam Sarwick, bear witness. Ralph was surprised and delighted, his chest felt like it was exploding. He was so happy that he almost floated up. Maester Hallis hurried to stand up, rushing to get the scriptures. When a lord bestows knighthood on his subordinates, there is a long knight's oath. Gregor had not notified Maester Hallis in advance, and Maester Hallis was unprepared. Adam Sarwick's heart fell to the ground, and he felt a sense of relief, only to find that his back was cold. His underwear was already wet with cold sweat. Dungeon, Mark the scribe, and Pollyver, the absolute loyal fans, were all envious and jealous. All three of them dreamed that one day they could be granted knighthood by Lord Gregor, to be granted knighthood by their super idol, that would be supreme glory, and, even more, they hoped that Lord Gregor could grant them the surname, Clegane. Gregor's four great Vatra all have no surname, and are all ordinary commoners. Although Mark the scribe can calculate very simply, his literacy is also very limited. In the civilization of this world, there is no multiplication table. A completely different calculation method from the multiplication table is used. Gregor first saw the method of calculating mathematics by calculating the intersection points of horizontal and vertical lines. For example, 11 multiplied by 11, first draw a vertical line to represent the tens digit 1 of the multiplier, and then draw a parallel vertical line to represent the ones digit 1 of the multiplier, then draw a horizontal line and the two vertical lines intersect to get 2 points. This horizontal line represents the tens digit 1 of the multiplicand, and then draw a parallel horizontal line to represent the ones digit 1 of the multiplicand. The second horizontal line still intersects with two parallel vertical lines to get 2 points, by counting the intersection points in the lower right corner to get the ones digit 1 of the product, and then add the points in the upper right corner to the points in the lower left corner to get the tens digit 2 of the product, and the points in the upper left corner get the number 1 in the hundreds digit of the product, which adds up to 121. With all kinds of education received by a junior in science and engineering in China in his previous life, in some aspects of knowledge in this civilized world, he is in an absolute crushing position, and he can completely get a maester's chain in the citadel of Old Town. For example, calculation, industrial machinery common sense, physical common sense and chemical level, such as poetry and storytelling level. Under the witness of Adam Sarwick, under the leadership of Maester Hallis, Gregor's sword rested on Sweetmouth Ralph's shoulder. Gregor said a knight's oath, and Sweetmouth Ralph followed suit. After the knight's oath was sworn, Gregor's great sword tapped Sweetmouth Ralph's head and each shoulder, and said, "Arise, Sir Ralph Clegane." Sweetmouth Ralph was stunned, in disbelief. He possessed the Clegane surname he had dreamed of. Dungeon, Mark, and Pollyver all heard a bang in their ears, and they also couldn't believe it. Lord Gregor not only bestowed the honor of knighthood on Sweetmouth, but also bestowed the Clegane surname on him, which made them feel so jealous in their hearts. And Sweetmouth Ralph, who has always been eloquent and spoke words like honey, was speechless, but his heart was filled with joy like an explosion. For this honor and surname, he was willing to die 100 times for Gregor. "Congratulations, Sir Ralph," Adam Sarwick clapped his hands to show his respect. Maester Hallis, Julie, Thomas the Horseman, Dungeon, Mark, and Pollyver all applauded to congratulate Sweetmouth Ralph on becoming Sir Ralph Clegane. Sweetmouth Ralph and Adam are both knights now. The only difference is, Sweetmouth Ralph is a landless knight, while Adam is a landed knight. The higher the rank of the knight bestowed, the more glorious it is for the person being bestowed. Gregor himself was bestowed knighthood by Prince Rhaegar Targaryen of the former dynasty. This honor was deliberately facilitated by Tywin Lannister, the Duke of the Westerlands. There is no more honorable knighthood than this except for the king. Only a year later, Prince Rhaegar and Robert Baratheon fought at the Trident River, and Robert killed Prince Rhaegar. Tywin of the Westerlands decided to stand on the side of the victor, so he led the Westerlands army to feign surrender to King Aerys Targaryen. In order to do the dirty work for Robert, the new king needed a good reputation to ascend the throne. With Tywin's tacit consent, Gregor killed Rhaegar Targaryen's infant son and raped the prince's wife. Tywin Lannister himself gave up the opportunity to bestow knighthood on Gregor and pushed Gregor in front of Prince Rhaegar to obtain the knighthood, which also shows Tywin's importance to his own vicious dog. Sweetmouth Ralph's face was flushed and the veins on his neck were bulging. The excitement in his heart could not be described in words. Lord Gregor, I, Sweetmouth Ralph, once again swear allegiance to you in the name of the 7 gods and the old and new gods. No matter what difficulties I encounter in the future, no matter how powerful enemies I face, even if Silver Hill collapses and the Sunset Sea dries up, my loyalty to my lord will never change. In times of crisis, I will not hesitate to dedicate my life. Chapter 20. Lafford, Clegane Knight, I swear, there will always be a place for you by my hearth. We will drink and eat meat at the same table. I will never force you to do anything you don't want to do. From now on, you are a member of House Clegane, and we will live and die together, Gregor said. He modified the oath read by Maester Hallis, changing I will never force you to do anything unjust to I will never force you to do anything you don't want to do. For a man who was going to pave his way with evil, the word unjust sounded grating and unsettling. Gregor already understood the dark and heavy side of this world better than most. He only cared about the motive and pursued the result, without considering whether the means were honorable or upright. The original oath didn't include the words live and die together, but Gregor wanted to start cultivating sworn knights who would die for him. Sweetmouth Lafford wouldn't be the first, nor would he be the last, so he specifically added the oath live and die together. A noble would never say such words as live and die together to subordinates. In the hierarchical noble society, the status of nobles and subordinates/commoners was completely different, with strict distinctions between superiors and inferiors. In Gregor's memory of the plot of this world, only Arya Stark of the North was a true oddity, even befriending the butcher's son. She even struck Prince Joffrey for the butcher's son on the Ruby Ford, triggering a series of events that ultimately killed her butcher friend and Sansa's dire wolf, Lady. Gregor's statement about living and dying together shocked everyone present. Adam Serrat was slightly uneasy. Gregor had become unfamiliar to him, not only bloodthirsty but also demeaning himself by treating his subordinates as equals, pledging to live and die together, and forming brotherhoods, which was a disgrace to noble honor. Maester Hallis was very surprised. Gregor's series of actions after getting rid of his addiction. The night raid, returning Alvar's body, capturing Adam Serrat, writing to Lord Tywin Lannister, knighting Sweetmouth Lafford. Made him seem nothing like a brute, but more like a wise man. Seeing the redness in Sweetmouth Lafford's eyes, Hallis knew that if Gregor wanted Lafford to die 100 times, Lafford would be willing. Lafford was already very excited, and tears moistened his eyes. Everyone could see that he was a little emotionally overwhelmed by the honor bestowed upon him and Gregor's granting of his surname. Maester Hallis watched coldly, a smiling demon who kills without blinking an eye was, in front of Gregor, like a 3-year-old child getting candy. Polliver's mouth was wide open, and his eyes were wide. His right hand was still in a splint, stretched straight in the air, and his left hand, holding a knife and fork, was also frozen in the air. He also wanted the honor of knighthood, also wanted the Clegane surname, and even more wanted Gregor's words live and die together. He was willing to pay any price for these words. To Polliver, a super fanboy, the influence of the super idol Gregor was like that of a god. Gregor continued, Sir Lafford Clegane, please remember our family motto. Family motto? My lord? We have a family motto. Lafford was pleasantly surprised. He knew that House Clegane had no family motto at all. The 3 generations of Clegane lords were illiterate and had very little education. Maester Hallis was even more stunned. Gregor was an illiterate, when did he come up with a family motto? Family mottos were either created by highly knowledgeable people in large families or carefully selected from maxims and proverbs with the help of great scholars for a hefty fee. If Gregor could come up with his own family motto, it would be a bit strange and unusual. The girl Julie, the old soldier Tom Asman, Adam Serrat, the executioner Dunson, the scribe Mark, and the brain-dead Fan Polliver were all staring blankly at Gregor. Only Maester Hallis watched coldly, with a strange feeling in his heart. Unrivaled. Gregor said. The Clegane family motto is unrivaled. Adam Serrat's mind exploded. He couldn't bear it any longer, and a burst of anger surged out of his heart. He stood up abruptly, Lord Gregor, unrivaled is the motto of my House Serrat. You are not worthy, Gregor said coldly. Only House Clegane is worthy of unrivaled. As for House Serrat, utterly charming suits your peacock coat of arms very well. I want to, Adam Serrat shouted, but he couldn't say the words duel with you after that. He only felt hot all over and had difficulty breathing, but he couldn't muster the courage to fight to the death for honor. Lafford stood up, patted Adam Serrat on the shoulder, and smiled as he raised his glass, Lord Adam, Don't be angry. You continue to use unrivaled as your family motto, and we Cleganes will use it too. I'm just a little worried that your family motto may become a joke to other nobles in the future. House Sarat is rich, so just hire a great scholar to come up with a new family motto, right? Don't be angry, come on, let's have a drink to celebrate my glory in joining House Clegane. Sweetmouth Lafford never cursed. He killed people with a gentle smile, his lips sweet as honey, and a sword hidden in his belly. Maester Hallis chuckled dumbly, so Gregor had taken a fancy to the Sarat family's family motto, which was in line with his bandit logic. Indeed, once the Clegane family's unrivaled motto spread, House Sarat would be disgraced and become a joke. When it comes to bravery, the best in the Westerlands, and even the best in the Seven Kingdoms, is only Gregor Clegane. Few would deny Gregor's claim to be unrivaled. However, this incident will also deepen the conflict between Gregor and House Sarat, adding fuel to the fire over Alvar's death. However, this was very much in line with Gregor's character. It seemed that a brute was just a brute, how could he become a wise man, even stealing a family motto? Father, you said you wouldn't kill me, right? The little girl Julie poured wine for Gregor and put a piece of honey-covered bread on Gregor's plate. Gregor's appetite was several times that of others. Gregor squinted at the little girl Julie, feeling a little guilty. Of course, no one could see his guilt. Gregor didn't know what the little girl would say, so he didn't respond. Sir Lafford Clegane, when you go to Lannisport to forge the Clegane coat of arms tomorrow, please help me forge one too. I like pins made of silver, and they have to be small. Lafford glanced at Gregor's slightly stiff face and smiled, okay, Julie. However, Gregor felt a chill in his heart. Lafford would kill Julie after the Sarat incident. The more sweetly he smiled, the more ruthless he would be, and he would dispose of Julie without alarming anyone. Julie was not Gregor's illegitimate daughter, nor was she any daughter of his. Sweetmouth Lafford naturally understood this, and he saw Lord Gregor's embarrassment. Sweetmouth Lafford naturally had to do a good job of cleaning up for Lord Gregor. Silently killing and cleanly disposing of a little girl was a delightful task for Sweetmouth Lafford. Gregor didn't want Julie to disappear like this. The little girl was innocent. Although he could order Sweetmouth Lafford not to touch Julie, but, well, since he saved her, he should protect her first. As for what would happen in the future, who knew? He would take it one step at a time. Lafford, tomorrow help Julie make a pin with the family crest, made of gold. He looked at Julie's clothes and head full of messy straw-like hair, also, take Julie to get her hair done and buy some nice clothes. Yes, my lord. The smile disappeared from Sweetmouth Lafford's face, and he shrugged. He only had a few coppers in his pocket, so he had to use the Clegane name and the sword at his waist to get credit. Maester Hallis, if you are willing, please teach Julie to read tomorrow. You must teach her all kinds of noble etiquette and common sense about the family crests and mottos of the great families of the Seven Kingdoms. Yes, my lord. Lord Adam Sarat, Julie is my adopted daughter, her name is Julie Clegane. Adam Sarat's face turned pale. The old soldier Tom Assman loosened his grip on the knife and fork. He glanced at Gregor, a grateful light flashing in his eyes, and then lowered his head and drank the bacon soup vigorously. Chapter 21. Gregor felt moved as he watched Tom Assman savor his bacon soup. His subjects under his banner, like Tom Assman, had endured hardship for far too long. The other subjects were the same. Gregor only ate half-heartedly, finding that with each bite, aside from the honey-smeared bread, which was still decent, the soup and meat seemed increasingly coarse and unpalatable compared to yesterday. Yet, everyone else ate with gusto. Even a noble like Adam Charlotte ate with grease dripping from his lips. Roasted and boiled meats piled high on the platter before him. Yesterday, after Gregor overcame his poppy addiction, everything tasted like the finest delicacies. Now he understood, it wasn't that the food was exceptionally delicious, but that he was simply too hungry. Various meats, including hunted boar and bear, were not thoroughly infused with salt due to their large size. The roasted meat was slightly better, but the boiled meat, having been cooked for too long, was tough and had a terrible texture. Moreover, the cook hadn't prepared any dipping sauce. There was no custom here of dipping boiled meat in sauce. Furthermore, besides knives and forks, there were no chopsticks. The refinement and deliciousness of culinary culture in this world simply couldn't compare to that of Earth's civilization. After all, an agricultural era, cold weapon civilization was several levels behind the internet and technology era. Gregor glanced at the wide wooden dining table. No message, no ginger, garlic, or cilantro, no soy sauce or vinegar, no salt as fine as sand and as white as snow, no chili peppers, no Pixian chili bean paste or lao gan ma. Despite this, salt was the king of all flavors, and even boiled meat dipped in salty seasoning would suffice, but the salt here contained a lot of grit, and some even had a slightly bitter taste, clearly indicating poor salt quality and refining techniques. Gregor then looked outside the stone fort's gate, at the pitch-black darkness, with the croaking of frogs, the chirping of insects, and a few small fireflies, but no electric lights, no streets, no cars. He had no phone in hand, and no computer in the room. A very primitive civilization. Gregor missed China's new 4 great inventions: high-speed rail, mobile payment, online shopping, and shared bikes. Remembering the new 4 great inventions, the old 4 great inventions came to mind: the compass, which wasn't difficult to make, he'd learned it in middle school science class, printing, papermaking, and gunpowder. The compass could be used to escape, gunpowder could be used for blasting and mining, and even for killing enemies. As for papermaking and printing, in an era when the White Walkers would soon attack the 7 kingdoms, in a doomsday era where the lives of the entire human race on the continent were uncertain for even a few more years, Gregor had no intention of spending time researching paper. Regardless of what he wanted to do in the future, or what he could accomplish, first of all, he had to mine gold, and privately mint gold dragons. The 7 kingdoms would be in chaos, and Littlefinger Peter Baelish, the master of coin, would leave King's Landing and disappear. The law against privately minting coins would become a mere formality. This was the worst of times, but it created the best opportunity for privately minting gold dragons. In this world, no one had yet made counterfeit money, so Gregor decided to be the first. There was a very professional business term for this: a blue ocean market. It doesn't matter if it's a black cat or a white cat, as long as it catches mice, it's a good cat. Only gold dragons are the real deal. Coming from a higher civilization, Gregor was not content to be a dog for a lord with a small territory and no more than 30,000 troops in an agricultural civilization. Estimating the territory of the Westerlands, it was only equivalent to an ordinary city in Chinese civilization. The 7 kingdoms were not large either, only a few thousand miles from north to south, and the total strength of the 7 kingdoms was only about 300,000. Gregor recalled the history of China he had studied, the warring states, the change of dynasties, with millions of troops fighting each other at every turn. Various ingenious schemes emerged one after another, various fierce generals and strategists fought each other for strength, wisdom, and military tactics, vying for supremacy in the Central Plains. Heroes were unparalleled, taking the heads of enemy generals from a million-strong army. Strategists planned and directed operations in a tent, ensuring victory from thousands of miles away. In ancient China, a large feudal lord, a duke, could mobilize hundreds or thousands of retainers for a brawl, and armies easily numbered over 100,000. But in this world, a legion of 1,000 men was already considered a large lord. Even the wealthy Charlotte family, with gold and silver mines, usually had no more than 2,000 warriors, and only 3,000 combatants when they gathered farmers and miners during wartime. A lord with 3,000 combatants was already the strongest in the Westerlands nobility. A knight as brave and famous throughout the 7 kingdoms as Gregor himself had a small territory and few subjects, only 11 households. Gregor made up his mind to walk his own path, change his predetermined fate, and if this world was not ultimately destroyed by the White Walkers in a few years, then let the flower of Chinese civilization bloom here. If the situation was not right, then he would take the gold dragons and escape across the narrow sea, heading east without looking back. In the morning, a troop of cavalry rode down the Golden Road. The leader was none other than Alan Charlotte, the captain of the guard of Alva Charlotte, who had been scared to death by Gregor. The standard-bearer beside him held a flagpole in both hands, with a lifelike peacock in full display on the banner, representing the Charlotte family of Silver Hill. From afar, Polliver saw this banner on the roof of Clegane's keep. "They're here, Notebook, the Charlottes are here," Polliver shouted. Notebook, who was in the courtyard watching Drennan teach Julie how to practice swordplay with left and right turning steps, immediately jumped on his horse. "How many men are there?" "About 30, Polliver shouted. Notebook shouted to Rafford Clegane on the stone steps, "Notify Lord Gregor, the Charlottes are here." Rafford waved his hand, and Notebook rode out of the courtyard to scout the enemy. Drennan stopped Julie's training, strode into the house, dropped the training sword, put on his armor, fastened his sword belt, checked his short sword and steel-tipped dagger, and hung his long sword. He came out and went straight to the hall. Gregor was in the hall, with his fearsome greatsword, a huge oak shield, and heavy armor hanging on the wall. Sweetmouth Ralph and horseman Tom Assman were helping Lord Gregor put on his armor. Julie Clegane ran in, holding her skirt, and the training sword in her hand had been replaced with a short sword. Gregor noticed that Julie's skirt straps were dragging on the ground. Gregor disliked his armor for being too complicated. His physique was too large, and the front and back steel plates had to be fastened and tied piece by piece, requiring 2 people to help from the front and back, which was very troublesome. The steel backplate and shoulder armor also required the help of guards, which was very inconvenient. If he was ambushed, there would be no time to put on the armor. This was unavoidable. In the age of cold weapons, armor was similar to bulletproof vests in his previous civilization. For safety, no matter how heavy or troublesome, he had to wear it. However, Julie's skirt could be modified, changed into tight-legged pants from Chinese civilization. All the skirts should be removed, and all the decorative belts around the waist should be discarded, replaced with a special sword belt that could hang many weapons. Julie's sleeve cuffs were also too wide, and practicing martial arts and swordsmanship would hinder the cleanliness and neatness of her movements. If tight cuffs were adopted, locking the sleeves with buttons, fastened on the wrists, it would definitely increase the speed of drawing the sword and reduce resistance. First design a set of training clothes for Julie. All wide styles should be changed to compact styles, wide sleeves, floor-length skirts, and decorative belts should be eliminated, and elastic tops, mandarin jackets, and wide crotch, tight-legged pants should be worn. Oh, right, there are no mandarin jackets in this world yet. Gregor stared at Julie intently. In his eyes, Julie had turned into a young woman wearing the simple and capable training clothes he had designed, with the aura of a technological civilization. She was clean and neat, well-tailored. Her every move, turn, and dodge had no restraint or burden from clothes and skirts, minimizing the resistance and inconvenience caused by skirts during movement. Julie's short sword stabbed towards Gregor's eyes. "Hey, what are you looking at?" Horseman Tom Assman and Sweetmouth Ralph were both startled. They were afraid of Gregor's rage. Gregor was expressionless. He didn't know why Julie wasn't afraid of him at all, given his infamous reputation. He guessed it had something to do with Julie's misfortune. The little girl's soul and heart might have died several times. She might not be afraid of death at all, or she might have already considered herself dead, and being alive now was already a bonus. In short, Julie was not a normal little girl. He couldn't let the little girl who wasn't afraid of him take advantage of the situation. Gregor said in an indifferent and stern voice, "Julie. Drennan. Escort Sir Adam Charlotte from the dungeon." "Yes, Lord," Drennan and Julie said in unison. Drennan walked in front, and Julie walked behind. When leaving the gate, Julie turned her head and winked her right eye at Gregor. Chapter 22. "Lord Gregor, we have brought 1,000 gold dragons as you requested," said Alan Sherritt. 2 family soldiers opened the boxes, revealing a chest full of glittering gold coins. Sweetmouth Ralph gave a satisfied smile. The scribe licked his lips. Dunson, on the other hand, kept his hand on his sword hilt, while Polliver's eyes widened. Julie was relatively normal, but the eyes of the horse soldier, Thomas Mann, nearly fell into the gold coin box. Maester Harry was shocked. Sherritt shouldn't have this much money. Gregor estimated that 1,000 gold dragons was equivalent to 10 million RMB in Earth's civilization. For a great lord, 1,000 gold coins was not much. But it exceeded the usual ransom amount. Generally speaking, a ransom for a hostage like this would be appropriately priced at 300 to 500 gold coins. The fact that they were willing to offer 1,000 gold coins to exchange for Adam Sherritt, after losing Alva Sherritt's life, made Gregor feel uneasy. In his previous life, although he was not a business expert, he had the experience of buying vegetables in the market, and haggling was the most basic rule of trade. 1,000 gold coins was just his asking price, and he was waiting for the other party to cut it in half and then propose a deal. But they didn't bargain, and Gregor's asking price became the transaction price. Obviously, this was not how business was done. No matter how rich the Sherritt family was, they wouldn't do business like this. Especially after losing a life and having a blood feud between them. Gregor felt that something was amiss. He was fully armed and wore his huge flat-topped helmet, the iron fist in the center of the helmet pointing straight to the sky. It was imposing, but not practical. Gregor decided to remove the iron fist from the helmet after this incident. Every bit of weight reduction was a benefit. Every bit of weight was a burden. To guard against arrows, Gregor's mask was equally thick, with only small holes for breathing and a narrow slit in front of his eyes. The iron smelting technology in this world was very mature, and the smelting techniques for various gold, silver, copper, and iron ores were very sophisticated. The pure hand craftsmanship used to create decorations, armor, and coins from various metals was more exquisite than the hand craftsmanship in Earth's civilization. The glass-making technology was also very mature and could be used to make many beautiful glass ornaments. With these mature metalworking techniques, Gregor hoped to create some of the things he wanted based on them. Gregor's expression was neither happy nor sad. Since the other party was willing to yield with 1,000 gold dragons without haggling, then they were very likely planning revenge. To a person about to be killed, giving him 1 gold dragon or 1,000 gold dragons was the same, so why bother making trouble? Gregor was fully armed, carrying his great sword, naturally to guard against the other party's sudden attack. He looked at the doorway. The cavalry that Alan Sherritt brought were all outside the gate. Gregor didn't allow them to enter the courtyard. Standing beside Alan were only 2 guards carrying the boxes. "Lord, 1,000 gold dragons, would you like to count them?" Alan Sherritt asked. "Count them?" Gregor remembered the scene of biting gold. In many TV shows and movies he had watched in his previous life, there were scenes of teeth biting gold to test the authenticity of the gold, but if the other party put poison on the gold. It's okay to be wary of others, but it's even more important to be careful. "No need to count them," Gregor said. "Dunson, Thomas Mann, carry the gold coin boxes inside." "Yes, Lord." 1,000 gold dragons weighed about 100 pounds. Dunson and Thomas Mann carried the gold coin boxes into Gregor's bedroom and locked the door. They suddenly became very rich. 1,000 gold coins, ha ha, ha ha ha. Ralph wouldn't need to go into debt to have the family crest made in Lanny Sport. He could have a pure gold family crest made. Tonight, the licensee girls in the high-end brothels of Lanny Sport would welcome their regular customers. With money, drinking, eating, and going to brothels were the 3 great hobbies of Gregor and his men. "Lord, now that you have received the gold dragons, can you return Sir Adam to us?" Alan smiled humbly. Gregor nodded. His eyes, behind the narrow slit of his mask, were calmly and cautiously watching Alan. If the other party was going to make a move, it would definitely be after Adam Sherritt was released. Adam Sherritt was no ordinary person. He was the eldest son of Earl Tygett Sherritt and the heir to the Sherritt family. Of course, with just those few people and the 30 or so swords outside the courtyard, they were no match for Gregor, but it was possible that their men were in the woods of the Silver Hill Mountains not far away. Gregor's caution was several times greater than his previous self. If it were the old Gregor, he wouldn't bother wearing armor at all. With his great sword in hand at his own Clegane's keep, he wouldn't be afraid of anyone, let alone getting hurt. But the transmigrated college student thought differently. What if the other party used arrows and smeared poison on the arrowheads? He had a deep and unforgettable memory of Gregor's torment by the viper's venom in Game of Thrones from his previous life. It was always good to be as careful as possible. This world was a drama of conspiracy and betrayal, darkness and passion. Compared to nobles, he was more willing to trust criminals. Adam Sherritt's ropes were cut by the little girl Julie. Adam thanked Julie and strode towards Alan. He just wanted to leave quickly and not stay for a moment. He was very angry in his heart. His brothers at home were too rash. Why did they have to use 1,000 gold dragons to exchange for him? 500 gold dragons would have been enough. Adam Sherritt walked out of the courtyard without looking back and mounted his horse. Gregor also didn't say a word. From the moment the hostage left, Sherritt could openly declare war on Gregor. But they had to consider what kind of price they would pay again. If they angered Gregor, he would set Silverhall on fire and kill all of Sherritt's people. Alan Sherritt thanked Gregor and then shouted, "Bring in the arbor wine." Arbor wine was a famous wine in this world. In Gregor's eyes, it was the Rolls-Royce of wines. Sweetmouth Ralph laughed. "Alan, why didn't you bring the wine in with the gold coins to honor our Lord Gregor?" Alan smiled. "Ralph, if Lord Gregor took the money but refused to return Sir Adam to us, we would have to take back the wine we gave to Lord Gregor. Now that we have received the money and returned the person to you, you are willing to bring the wine in and give it to us?" "Yes." Several jars of arbor wine were brought in. Arbor wine was stored in large, round-bellied wooden barrels. The barrel was blue with a bunch of deep purple grapes painted on it. The blue background with deep purple grapes was the sigil of House Red Wine of the Arbor and the mark of authentic Arbor wine, equivalent to a trademark in Earth's civilization. Everyone, including Gregor, moved their throats. The best famous wine in this world, Arbor wine, was sold to the free trade cities across the narrow sea and even more distant eastern cities. As soon as the wine barrels were put down, Sweetmouth Ralph, Executioner Dunson, Scribe Mark, and Polliver immediately surrounded them. The wine was more attractive than the 1,000 gold dragons. These 2 jars are red wine, and these 2 jars are even rarer golden wine, a small token from the Sherritt family. Alan said, patting the wine jars. Sweetmouth Ralph and the others' eyes widened. Maester Harry also twitched his lips. Everyone had drunk Arbor red wine, but they had basically never drunk golden wine. Golden wine was very rare, not only was it expensive and had a small output, but you also had to be a great lord to be able to buy it. Maester Harry, Polliver, and the others had heard of the fame of golden wine for a long time, but they rarely had the opportunity to drink such a famous wine. Gregor and his gang were all heroes in brothels and good men in wine. Polliver licked his lips and looked at Lord Gregor, stuttering, "Lord, we carry it in, get the cups," Gregor said. Chapter 23. 4 barrels of Arbor gold were carried into the dining hall. The only cook and the only housemaid in the castle came when they heard the news. Everyone opened the sealed lids of the wooden barrels, and a fragrant aroma of wine wafted out. The wine was crystal clear and bright gold, like a jar of bright, transparent liquid gold. Sweetmouth Ralph put the lid back on and said, "Lord Gregor hasn't arrived yet. The first cup of wine must be tasted by the Lord first." "Yes, knight." Polliver was very envious of Sweetmouth Ralph for becoming a knight, and he kept swallowing his saliva. Maester Halleys shook his head and said, "Golden Arbor gold wine should be served in wooden cups. I heard Grand Maester Pot say that the most exquisite way to drink it is to use wooden cups carved from the trunk of the golden grape itself, which is the most distinctive and delicious. Red Arbor gold wine is fine in glass cups, but only the golden wine requires a wooden cup to ensure the purity of its flavor. There are no wooden cups." Sweetmouth Ralph said. "Does it need to be shaken first?" Dunson asked Maester Halleys. "Yes, shake it first. The quality of the wine is so beautiful, like golden honey," Maester Halleys praised. At the bottom of the round wooden barrel, there are 3 small wooden stoppers arranged in order of height. When the stoppers are turned, the wine is released. The small wooden stoppers are designed with different heights because of the pressure of the wine. If the bottom stopper is turned first, the wine will come out too quickly and may splash. Drinking in the order of the small stoppers, the wine will flow out gently and will not splash. Only the finest Arbor wines have a 3-stopper design. Wine barrels in other places only have 1 stopper. In the courtyard, Alan Charlotte half bowed to Gregor. "Lord Gregor, please enjoy the wine, we should go back." "Adam Charlotte has already left," Gregor said. As soon as Adam Charlotte left the courtyard, he jumped on his horse, and the sound of hooves rang out. A group of cavalry quickly left Clegane's keep, escorting him. "Yes, my lord, Sir Adam is gone, we should go too, goodbye." Alan Charlotte turned to leave. The 4 wine-carrying servants beside him immediately followed. "You can't leave, Alan," Gregor said lightly. His hand rested on the hilt of his great sword. He didn't say "please stay," but "you can't leave," with a tone of certainty, similar to giving an order. Gregor has always been very assertive. Alan Charlotte stopped and looked back. "Lord Gregor, do you have any other instructions?" "I want to invite you for a drink," Gregor said. Gregor has never trusted Alan at all, from beginning to end. Better to trust a criminal than a nobleman. This is what Gregor firmly believes. "Okay." A smile appeared on Alan's face, as if he was also looking forward to a few drinks of good wine. Gregor looked carefully at Alan's eyes through the narrow slit of his visor. He couldn't see that Alan was up to anything. "Bring your 4 brothers as well," Gregor added. "Thank you, my lord." The 4 wine-carrying guards were overjoyed and said in unison, their faces filled with uncontrollable smiles. "There is no harm without comparison." Gregor saw the 4 guards' delight, but Alan only had a polite smile on his face, without any eager joy. As the captain of the Arbor Guards, Alan is not qualified to drink golden wine in the Charlotte family. This kind of wine is hidden by the family's earl and only drunk by himself and his family. Any man would be happy to drink the most expensive and best wine in the world. Alan's smile was a little fake, but that doesn't mean anything. He may have drunk this kind of wine before, such as when he made a contribution, or when Sir Erwin poured him a cup to taste. Or Alan may hate Gregor so much that he is repulsed by drinking with Gregor from the bottom of his heart. Gregor, Alan, and the 4 family guards walked into the dining hall together. On the long, narrow table in the dining hall, a round-bellied wooden barrel had already been placed. The cook had moved the remaining 3 barrels of wine into the basement of the kitchen to hide them. Every household in the 7 kingdoms has a basement, because when winter comes, it lasts for 2 or 3 years, or even 10 years. In summer, they usually have to store food for 10 years. The kitchen basement is used to store food. Some large noble families have a large population, and the area of the basement is as large as the ground area. Next to the wine barrel, cups had already been placed. There were no wooden cups, all glass cups. Before Gregor arrived, none of his subordinates or servants would dare to drink before him. These supervillains in the eyes of others have very strict internal rules, which outsiders do not understand. The loyalty of these villains, who do all kinds of bad things and never do good deeds, to Gregor is also incomprehensible to others. Seeing Alan and the 4 Charlotte family soldiers come in together, Sweetmouth and the others were all puzzled. Pour the wine. Gregor took off his helmet. The helmet was very heavy, but the impact on him was negligible. He put the helmet on the table with a thud. Maester Hallys turned the small wooden stopper, and the golden wine flowed out. The aroma of wine wafted out. Gregor tilted his head and gestured with his mouth, signaling Alan Charlotte to drink. Alan smiled slightly, reached out and picked up the glass. "Lord Gregor, I toast you." Gregor nodded, and Maester Hallys poured the second glass of wine. Gregor raised his glass, signaling Alan to drink first. Alan put the wine to his nose, sniffed it gently, and closed his eyes to enjoy the aroma. After a long while, he slowly opened his eyes, smiled at Gregor, who was staring at him, and then slowly sipped it little by little. "Good wine, my lord, please." Alan praised comfortably. A little golden wine stain remained on his lips. "You." Gregor handed the wine to one of Alan's guards. He was tall and had long arms, and handed the glass over the table to behind Alan. The guard hesitated for a moment, as if he couldn't believe it. Such fine wine, is Lord Gregor inviting him to drink first? After understanding Lord Gregor's meaning through eye contact, the guard was very excited, took the glass and slowly tasted it. It was mellow and pleasant, and then, under everyone's gaze, he drank the wine in several sips. "Pour the wine," Gregor said. So, Maester Hallys poured 2 more glasses of wine and let the other 2 Charlotte family guards drink it. "Bring out a barrel of red wine," Gregor ordered the cook. The cook didn't dare to disobey and immediately brought out a barrel of red Arbor Gold wine. "Pour a cup for the 5 of them," Gregor said lightly. He sat down, and the tall stool that belonged to him groaned under his body. He didn't take off his armor, nor did he unfasten his great sword. The stool under him creaked lightly, as if it would fall apart at any moment. In the gurgling sound of pouring wine, Sweetmouth Ralph and Maester Hallys slowly saw Gregor's intention. The lord didn't believe that the wine sent by the Charlotte family was well-intentioned. Alan raised the red wine and smiled. "Lord Gregor, such good wine, let's 5 of us toast you a cup together." "What, you don't dare!" "Ha ha! Ha ha ha!" Alan drank the red wine in one gulp and smiled. "Mountain is a coward, not even daring to drink the wine sent by the Charlotte family, but I only regret that I didn't drink enough." "Maester, pour me another cup." "Ha ha, the famous Mountain dares not drink, do you dare to drink?" "None of you dare to drink." Alan shook his head. "A bunch of cowards, cockroaches, rats, stinky fish." "I'll drink," Polliver said loudly. Gregor glanced at Polliver and said lightly, "Polliver, you dare to drink the wine sent by your enemies." "My lord, they have already drunk it, it's okay." "Just because their wine is okay for them to drink doesn't mean we can drink it," Gregor said coldly. As soon as these words came out, Alan's face finally changed. Chapter 24. Raff, pour the wine. "Maester Harry, step back." Gregor stared at Alan. Maester Harry immediately retreated, and Sweetmouth Raff replaced him with a grin. Dunson's hand gripped his sword hilt, and notes circled behind Alan and the others. Polliver twitched his neck nervously, as if ants were crawling on it, and his left hand grasped the handle of his short knife. The tacit understanding between them surprised Maester Harry. Julie gripped the hilt of her short sword, and the old horse soldier Tom Asman gripped his dagger. The group surrounded Alan and his 4 guards at the core. Raff pulled out the small cork and began to pour the wine again. However, before he could finish pouring 5 cups, blood started trickling from Alan's nose. The 4 guards also swayed slightly, some feeling a heat in their nostrils. They reached up and smeared it, finding blood. The guards looked blankly at the blood on their hands. The 4 guards were unaware of Captain Alan's poisoned wine plan. "Drink," Gregor said. "Keep drinking. Good. We can't waste such good wine." Alan laughed, reaching out to pick up a glass, then another. Suddenly, he splashed the wine at Gregor. Even as the golden liquid was still in the air, Dunson's sword was already out of its sheath. A flash of cold light, and blood splattered as Alan's arm fell to the ground. Gregor was a large target, but nimble like a cat. With a slight exertion of his legs, he moved the stool aside, and the wine splashed on the ground. "Ah!" In the midst of the scream, Alan clutched his severed right arm with his left hand. Beside Alan, the shocked 4 guards were as stiff as rocks. Then, all 4 realized that blood was gushing from their nostrils uncontrollably. In eerie unison, they all reached for their own necks, but found they lacked the strength. Red, web-like blood vessels appeared on their faces, and they gurgled in their throats, unable to utter a complete sentence. "The Strangler!" Maester Harry exclaimed in shock. "Poison from Lys!" Thump! Alan, whose face was also undergoing a terrifying transformation, collapsed, his eyes rapidly bloodshot, blood gushing from his nostrils and the corners of his mouth. His left hand reached towards his throat, fingers hooked and trembling, but an invisible force seemed to be pulling his left hand away, keeping it at a constant distance from his throat. Thump, thump, thump. The 4 guards of House Sherritt fell one by one, their faces covered with web-like red veins, their eyes turning red, and blood flowing from their facial features. Their hands were stiff like hooks, all making the motion of reaching for their own throats, but as if controlled by an invisible force, they could not reach their target. The Strangler is a poison researched by the wizards of Lys. It's invisible, odorless, and tasteless, and extremely expensive. Only royal nobles and wealthy individuals can afford it, Maester Harry said, his voice trembling. "Is there no antidote for this poison?" Sweetmouth Raff asked, his expression a mix of surprise and uncertainty. "No. But the wizards have their own secret methods of detoxification, dark magic," Maester Harry said, still shaken. He looked at Gregor, the brute who had saved everyone's life. "Their wine, just because they can drink it without harm doesn't mean we can." Gregor's words echoed in Maester Harry's ears. These weren't words the Mountain would normally say, there was wisdom in them. Maester Harry recalled another of Gregor's sayings, "Polliver, you dare to drink wine from an enemy." Gregor had never trusted Alan and House Sherritt from beginning to end. His perception of the situation was precise, clear, and unambiguous. House Sherritt was the enemy. Harry's gaze towards Gregor changed. Gregor didn't seem like the Mountain anymore. Gregor stood up and said, "Polliver, put on Alan's clothes and wave from the rooftop. If I'm not mistaken, there should be cavalry ambushing in the woods, placed there by Alan." Maester Harry said, "Impossible. If they poisoned you and achieved their goal, why would they still have cavalry ambushing? And if they failed to poison you, cavalry wouldn't be a match for you. The cavalry is waiting to come out and exterminate the clan after I'm poisoned. They'll kill everyone in Clegane's keep, but they'll spare you and pay you handsomely to return to Lord Tywin and exonerate House Sherritt." Maester Harry stammered, "Kill Lord Tywin's most valued general, and then kill all the officers under the general? Does House Sherritt want to be exterminated?" Maester Harry said. "They won't be exterminated. Alan Sherritt's branch will be exterminated. Silverhall Sherritt will spend a large sum of money to give to Lord Tywin, and all the great nobles of the Westerlands will speak on behalf of House Sherritt." Gregor's patience was surprisingly good, something Sweetmouth Raff also noticed. In the past, the Mountain would have been too impatient to explain these things, he would have found it painful to say even one extra word. "Why? I can't understand." Maester Harry couldn't comprehend it. Gregor said in a deep voice, "Alan Sherritt delivered the poisoned wine, but he's not from the Silverhall Tyget Sherritt family. He's from a distant branch, avenging his master Alva in accordance with honor and law. If I'm not mistaken, the ambushing cavalry are all mine mercenaries, no one from House Sherritt will be among them." Maester Harry gasped. Regardless of the truth, Gregor's intelligence seemed far above his own. This was impossible. If Alan succeeds and the cavalry destroys Clegane's keep, How will House Sherrod explain it when Lord Tywin investigates? After this cavalry destroys Clegane's keep, they'll be killed by House Sherrod's cavalry, claiming it was to avenge me, and then their heads will be presented to Lord Tywin. Maester Harry was speechless. How could Gregor conceive of such a complex strategy? How could he understand it? Polliver, who hadn't understood at all, had already put on Alan's clothes and armor and ran to the top of the keep, waving towards the nearby woods. An unbelievable scene unfolded before Polliver's eyes. 2 teams of cavalry charged out from the left and right sides, seemingly intending to attack Clegane's keep from both the front and rear. The sound of hooves rapidly approached the stone keep. Clang! Gregor's great sword was drawn. Follow me, kill them all. Ha! It was just the roar of a few people, but it roared out the momentum of thousands of troops. Sheep following a lion will also turn into lions. Clang, clang, clang. Dunson, Sweetmouth Raff, Notes, Julie, Old Horse Soldier Tom Asman, the cook and the servants all drew their swords. The air filled with the intent to battle, as if heating up. Take the shields, Tom Asman, protect Julie. Yes, sir. Julie, stay behind me. Yes, sir. Maester Harry's eyes widened, like bulging cow eyes. Sir, Julie and I can stay in the basement. No, you stay here, Julie will go out with me to fight, Gregor said calmly. Julie winked at the pale-faced Maester Harry, and a happy smile floated on the girl's face. A chill crawled up Maester Harry's back. The sound of hooves was urgent, attacking from the front and rear. Polliver rushed down. Sir, there are 30 riders, divided into 2 teams, using pincer tactics. Perfect plan, 30 people against Clegane's keep without the mountain, with an absolute advantage in numbers. We'll go out the main gate and take out the 15 in front first. Gregor put on his huge helmet, and strode out of the dining hall. As if in an instant, he was already in the courtyard, leaping onto his horse. Without him urging it, the well-trained warhorse understood its master's intentions and charged towards the gate. Behind him, the little girl Julie was a step slower, and the horse soldier Tom Asman hurriedly helped her onto her horse. Just as Julie pulled on the reins, several horses had already rushed out like a whirlwind. She and her father, Tom Asman, fell behind. Chapter 25. Gregor charged out to meet a band of cavalry thundering towards him. Both sides moved with great speed. The cavalrymen, realizing their mistake too late, were struck with terror as Gregor's great sword cleaved their captain in 2. A diagonal strike. Half a shoulder, along with the attached head, went flying, blood spraying like rain. The other half remained on horseback, carried past Gregor's warhorse. That single strike broke the spirit of the remaining 14 riders. However, the speed of the oncoming horses was too great to allow for an immediate turn, and the 2 riders following closely behind could only manage a desperate, oblique pass. Gregor spurred his horse forward, his great sword sweeping horizontally. One rider was cut in half at the waist. Before the cavalry captain's airborne corpse could fall, the upper half of the second body flew backward. The air instantly filled with the stench of blood. A lance thrust violently towards Gregor's face from the left, wielded by the rider who was unable to turn back from his oblique charge. Gregor's left hand snatched the lance, and with a light tug, the rider was pulled from his saddle by the immense force, losing his grip on the weapon. Gregor, using the momentum, thrust the lance downwards, impaling the rider's armor and pinning him to the ground. A rider close behind swerved his horse to avoid Gregor, circling away, not daring to retrace his path, instead fleeing north. Gregor yanked the lance free with his left hand and hurled it. The lance flew like an arrow, striking the fleeing rider squarely in the back with a sickening thud. The lance pierced his back and protruded from his chest. The lance carried the corpse over the horse's head and sent it crashing forward. Such was the terror of his throw. The remaining riders desperately reined in their horses, turning them around, but the maneuver proved too difficult for several, their horses rearing up and throwing them to the ground. The formation dissolved into chaos. Gregor kicked his horse into a gallop, charging forward. Against Gregor's furious assault, the time it took to turn a horse even halfway seemed agonizingly slow. Boom! Gregor's warhorse crashed into the disorganized enemy ranks. The great sword rose and fell, scattering limbs and torsos. Several riders and their mounts cleaved in 2. The single-handed great sword, swung with Gregor's arm and the angles of his body, had a greater reach than any lance. By the time Sweetmouth Ralph and the others had completed their encircling maneuver, only 3 enemy riders remained. Gregor blocked one side, and a single charge from Sweetmouth Ralph and his men was enough to cut down the remaining 3 riders. Julie and Thomas Mann only arrived after the battle was over. Fan formation! Gregor roared. And so, with Gregor as the tip of the spear, a fan-shaped cavalry formation spread out behind him. Fan formations were suitable for hunting, while wedge formations were better for charging. The riders sent to the other side of Clegane Keep to intercept those fleeing the castle found no panicked enemies spilling from the doors. The back gate of Clegane Keep remained firmly shut. They were waiting for those inside to open the gate and flee, so they could chase them down. The sounds of fighting from the other side were strange, the thunder of hooves incessant, leaving them bewildered. The experienced riders left 4 men and horses to guard the rear gate, while the rest, led by their captain, rode along the outer wall to investigate. The stone keep itself did not occupy a large area, but the outer yard of Clegane Keep was vast, the stone walls blocking their view. Suddenly, a rider emerged from around the corner of the castle wall, a giant of a man, like a mountain, the dreaded Mountain himself. The cavalrymen were stunned for a moment. The Mountain's warhorse, without needing instruction, surged forward. The distance was too short. Before the captain could draw his sword, the Mountain's blade came crashing down. A single strike split him from the crown of his head, cleaving him in 2. His helmet and armor offered as much protection as paper. The scene was too gruesome, and it happened too quickly. Boom! The remaining 10 riders scattered like flies, desperately turning their horses to flee. None dared to draw their swords and face Gregor. They were utterly terrified. Gregor's great sword swung like a scythe, and the 2 leading riders, only halfway through their turn, their bodies barely rotated, were cut in half. Killing men was as easy as chopping vegetables. The riders on the edges, turning to flee obliquely, suddenly found themselves facing the enemy. Sweetmouth Ralph, Scribble, Executioner Dunson, Polliver, Julie and Thomas Mann, along with the cook and servants, formed a fan, like a net stretched before them. Julie and Thomas Mann followed not far behind Gregor, close to the wall. Dunson roared and charged, his long sword a blur of motion. A rider charged towards him. These riders attacking Clegane Keep were indeed all mercenaries. The armor and helmets of the mercenaries were noticeably inferior to those of the Sherritt family's knights. Many of the mercenaries wore leather armor, not steel. Drinking and whoring were the hallmarks of a mercenary's life. The mercenary's sword struck Dunson's round shield, while Dunson's long sword slashed into the mercenary's neck. The neck, unprotected by a gorget, was vulnerable. The mercenary fell from his horse without a cry. Sweetmouth Ralph, an expert horseman, had already overtaken the fleeing riders on the edge, beginning to close the trap. The fan formation easily encircled the enemy, forcing them inward. This band of riders, emerging from the stone walls, were already at a disadvantage. At the same time, the 4 riders near the wall were quickly dispatched by Gregor, who killed 2, while the last 2 fled along the wall. Gregor gave chase, cleaving the rearmost rider in the back. As the rider fell from his horse, Gregor spotted the 4 riders guarding the back gate. He spurred his horse forward, charging after the man desperately calling for help from the 4 riders, and with a light swing of his sword, sent his head flying. The rider's body remained firmly in the saddle, carrying the headless corpse into the ranks of the 4 gate guards. The 4 riders cried out and fled. Experienced, they fled west in unison, guided by the sounds. To the west lay flatlands, and beyond, the famed Lanny Sport and the Sunset Sea. Gregor did not utter a word, but kicked his horse, the steed snorting loudly and surging forward, quickly closing the distance. But Gregor could feel his horse's strength beginning to wane. He was too heavy, his speed too great, and his repeated urging had pushed the horse to its limit. A storm cannot last all day, and a violent charge drains strength, both for man and beast. Gregor drew his short sword and hurled it. The blade struck the last rider in the back. This rider was fully armored, perhaps the reason for his slower speed, allowing Gregor to catch up. The short sword struck the armor with a loud clang, the tip piercing the armor but only scratching the skin. But the force of the impact was tremendous, and the rider's back felt as if it had been struck by a hammer, sending him tumbling to the ground. Before he could rise, a flash of steel descended, and with a sickening sound, his head flew off. The sound of hooves grew louder, and the 3 riders ahead glanced back in panic. Scatter! One mercenary shouted. And so, the 3 mercenaries fled in 3 directions. Gregor roared and gave chase to the mercenary on the left. The mercenary on the left had the best chance of escape. He was fleeing towards the lands of House Swift, another great house of the Westerlands. If he could cross the narrow plain and enter the Swift family's ancient forest, he would be difficult to catch. The edge of the forest marked the border, and beyond lay the reach and the lands of House Tyrell. The mercenaries in the center and on the right were fleeing deeper into the Westerlands. A straight path led to Lannisport, while a turn to the right led to the heart of the Westerlands, making escape difficult. And behind them, Sweetmouth Ralph and the others were in pursuit. Gregor focused on the mercenary on the left, relentlessly chasing him. But the mercenary was desperate, his horse running as if aflame, growing ever faster, gradually increasing the distance. Gregor's horse was a fine steed, but it was burdened by Gregor's weight and armor, several times heavier than a normal man. While the other horses carried 100 pounds, his carried 500. Gregor could not hope to match the speed of a lightly burdened mercenary in a long chase. Gregor sighed inwardly. If he had a javelin, the man would already be dead. No, he needed to practice his archery after this battle. With a bow in hand, he could kill such a fleeing target with a single arrow, instead of this exhausting chase. His horse was already tiring, while the other man was pushing his horse to its absolute limit in a desperate attempt to escape. The mercenary cared nothing for his horse's life, only his own. But Gregor had no intention of giving up. He had given the order to kill them all, and he would do everything in his power to fulfill it. As the mercenary fled further and further away, Gregor heard the sound of hoofs behind him. He turned to see Julie galloping towards him on horseback. "Father, quickly, take my horse." Good. He had barely accepted this adopted daughter, and already she was proving useful in battle, crucially so. Gregor usually traveled with 3 horses, and Julie was riding one of his own fine steeds. Julie was light, and wore no armor, and the horse was full of energy and eager for battle. Gregor and Julie exchanged horses on the run, and without needing any urging or the prick of spurs, the horse neighed and surged forward like an arrow. In an instant, Gregor closed the distance between himself and the mercenary. The mercenary spurred his horse desperately, the animal running to its absolute limit, but storms cannot last forever, and the horse's speed could not be sustained. Julie shouted and cheered from behind, urging Gregor on. Gregor rotated his wrist, the heavy greatsword feeling weightless in his hand, the blade swirling in a series of arcs. He whistled, catching up to the enemy, and with a light swing of his sword, cut the man in two, silencing his terrified pleas. He claimed the rider's horse as his own. War horses were valuable military assets, and training one was no easy task. On the other side, Sweetmouth Ralph and the others had completed their pursuit as well, and returned with 2 heads impaled on their sword tips, held aloft. They also captured 2 horses, dragging the headless corpses behind them. The sound of hooves grew louder, and Sweetmouth Ralph and the others roared, "Ha! Ha ha ha! Ha!" All 30 mercenary cavalrymen who had attacked Clegane Keep were dead.